90s scary mythical creature stories. Legendary creatures that actually exist in real life. Let's talk about scary creatures. The kind of nightmares that send grown adults running for the nearest light switch. But the crazy thing is that every culture on this planet seems to have invented its own terrifying monster to keep people awake at night. Were these stories born out of actual sightings? Wild imaginations? Or were ancient people just really bored? Whatever the reason, these creatures are as bizarre as they are goosebump-inducing. And, frankly, some are downright hilarious when you hear their backstories. Think about it. Creatures with heads of goats, wings of bats, and attitudes worse than your famished and frustrated cousin at Thanksgiving. From the jungles of South America to the icy peaks of the Himalayas, these monsters have haunted campfire stories, folklore, and drunk history lessons for centuries. And let me tell you, these aren't your Hollywood monsters with makeup and CGI. Oh no, these are the OGs of scary, with folklore so detailed you'd think they had their own PR teams. But here's the fun part. These scary creatures come with histories and peculiarities that'll make you laugh, cringe, and maybe question humanity's collective creativity. Why did ancient Greeks invent a creature that could petrify you with a glance? Why does Japan have a monster dedicated to licking your ceilings clean? And who in South America thought a donkey vampire was the ultimate nightmare fuel? So, grab a snack or a blanket to hide under and get ready for a wild ride. This isn't just a list of monsters. It's a hilarious investigation into the weirdest, creepiest, and most downright ridiculous creatures the world has ever cooked up. This is 90 scary creatures and their weirdly fun histories. And trust me, you won't look at folklore the same way again. Let's jump in. Let's start strong, because our first creature doesn't just give you goosebumps. One look at her can turn you to stone. Meet Medusa, the original bad hair day, and trust me, her story is just as twisted as her serpentine locks. 1. Medusa, the queen of the stone-cold stare. Before Medusa became the nightmare of ancient Greece, she was part of a family with some seriously unique genes. Medusa wasn't just any monster, she belonged to a trio known as the Gorgons, each one more terrifying than the last. But here's the twist, Medusa was the only one who could, well, die. Yep, out of the three, she drew the short straw. Let's meet the family, shall we? First there was Stheno, the strong sister. Imagine the friend who's always ready to throw a punch and you've got Stheno. Then there's Uriel, known for her loud, almost operatic cries. If karaoke competitions existed in ancient Greece, she'd sweep every one of them. And finally, Medusa, the youngest and oddly enough, the most human. While Stheno and Uriel were born immortal with terrifying features, Medusa started life as a stunning mortal woman. You know, the kind of beauty that stops people in their tracks, or later, turns them into stone. So why was Medusa the odd one out? Well, according to myth, she was mortal because she wasn't born a Gorgon. Unlike her monstrous sisters, she started life as a mortal priestess of Athena. Her parents, Phorcys and Ceto, were primordial sea deities, meaning Medusa was basically born into the elite family of ancient Greek monsters. Still, her humanity made her stand apart from her fearsome siblings, setting her up for a life and death that would make her far more famous than the other two combined. It's like Medusa's family reunion would have been a bit awkward. Her sisters probably mocked her for being the only one who needed sunscreen or could get a wrinkle. And let's not even start on how she was the one who could actually die. Thanks, Greek mythology, for sibling dynamics that would make therapy a necessity. But Medusa's story didn't stay in the shadow of her immortal sisters for long. Her beauty would soon make her famous, and not in the way she hoped. Let's find out how a mortal with stunning looks became one of mythology's most feared figures. Before she became the poster child for bad hair days, Medusa was the talk of ancient Greece, but for all the right reasons. She was a priestess of Athena, admired for her unmatched beauty. But as Greek mythology often teaches us, being too beautiful can be hazardous to your health. Here's how it went down. Medusa caught the eye of Poseidon, god of the sea, and a serial flirt. One day, in what can only be described as the ultimate boundary violation, Poseidon pursued Medusa into Athena's temple. What happened next depends on the version you hear, but either way, Athena was not happy. The temple was desecrated, and Medusa, despite being the victim, got the blame. Because apparently, Greek gods loved a good overreaction. Athena, in a fit of divine rage, cursed Medusa. Her once flowing locks became a writhing mass of venomous snakes. Her mesmerizing gaze, now capable of turning anyone into a stone lawn ornament. Overnight, Medusa went from admired to feared, all because she happened to catch the wrong god's attention. It's like the ultimate bad makeover. You know how you get mad at your stylist for cutting your bangs too short? Well, imagine leaving the salon with snakes for hair and a permanent look but don't look policy. And the cherry on top? Everyone blames you for the mess. Medusa's new look was enough to clear out any party, but it also came with a horrifying power that turned her curse into something far more complicated. Let's talk about what made her stare so deadly and how it became her greatest weapon. Medusa's petrifying gaze was the ultimate defense mechanism, turning anyone who dared to look directly into her eyes into solid stone. Talk about putting the hard in hardcore. This wasn't just a cool party trick. It was a terrifying, magical ability. Legend has it that Medusa's eyes reflected not just her cursed state, but also Athena's divine punishment. One glance, and your adventuring days were over. Heroes, soldiers, and the occasional clueless bystander learned this the hard way. But here's the twist. Her power was both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, nobody could mess with her without turning into a garden sculpture. On the other hand, it made simple things like meeting new people, let's say, challenging. Forget dinner dates, one wrong look, and the waiter's a marble statue holding a menu. Can you imagine the awkward scenarios? Like, what if the neighborhood delivery guy got curious? Oh, just a quick peek. What's the worst that could? Oops, there goes your pizza. Or the poor snake charmer who thought he'd found a soulmate, only to realize it was the last thing he'd ever see. But as powerful as her gaze was, it couldn't protect Medusa from a certain hero who brought both courage and a reflective surface to the party. Enter Perseus, the man with a mission to end her story in a way she definitely didn't see coming. Now let's talk about Perseus, the hero who managed to pull off the impossible. Armed with divine gadgets and a lot of nerve, he set out to slay Medusa. Not exactly a fair fight when you think about it. Perseus, tasked with bringing back Medusa's head, got a major assist from the gods. Athena lent him a polished shield to use as a mirror, and Hermes threw in a sickle-shaped sword. He also scored some winged sandals, because walking to a Gorgon's lair would have taken forever. Fully equipped, Perseus headed to Medusa's hideout, deep within a cave surrounded by her unfortunate victims. Using Athena's shield as a reflective guide, Perseus approached Medusa without ever looking directly at her. One swift swing and Medusa's head was severed. But here's the real deal. Her power didn't end with her death. Even as he carried her head in a sack, it retained its ability to turn people to stone. Imagine Perseus navigating the return trip. Okay, don't open the bag, don't look at the bag, and definitely don't let anyone ask what's in the bag. TSA in ancient Greece would have had a field day with that one. But while Perseus walked away a hero, Medusa's story didn't end there. Her legacy lived on, literally, as her head became one of the most infamous trophies in mythology. Let's explore how Medusa's power continued to shape legends long after her final breath. Medusa's death wasn't the end of her story. In fact, it was only the beginning of her legacy. Perseus didn't just toss her head into the nearest trash heap. Instead, he gifted it to Athena, who mounted it on her shield, the Aegis. Imagine being a warrior facing Athena in battle and seeing that staring back at you. Talk about an intimidation tactic. Even in death, Medusa's influence lingered. Her blood was said to have magical properties. Drops spilled on the ground created venomous serpents, while others were rumored to hold healing powers. Leave it to Greek mythology to make even blood multitask. Medusa's image has endured through centuries, becoming a symbol of power, mystery, and let's be honest, an aesthetic icon. From ancient art to high fashion, her story continues to captivate. She's been reimagined in films, books, and even as a feminist figure. Proof that some legends never fade. Medusa may have started as a cursed mortal, but she ended as something far greater. A symbol of resilience, misunderstood power, and the kind of bad hair day none of us can top. But let's switch gears and have a little fun with our favorite snake-haired legend. Medusa's story might be ancient, but her legacy is anything but dusty. In fact, she's managed to slither her way into modern culture as a misunderstood icon, a tragic anti-hero, and dare we say, a bit of a pop culture queen. Over the years, Medusa has been embraced as a feminist icon, and it's easy to see why. Think about it. A powerful woman wronged by the gods, cursed for something beyond her control, and feared by a world that didn't understand her. Sound familiar? Many modern interpretations portray her as a victim who turned her pain into power, making her a symbol of resilience and rebellion. And let's face it, she's the ultimate don't mess with me poster girl. Snakes for hair? Check. A glare that literally shuts people up? Double check. Medusa's the mythological equivalent of someone who doesn't just block you on social media. They turn you into stone. While Greek mythology painted her as a monster, modern storytellers have added layers to her character. Some see her as a tragic anti-hero, a woman who never asked for the life she was given, but found a way to survive it. Movies, books, and even video games have explored this side of Medusa, turning her from a one-dimensional villain into a deeply complex character. Honestly, who can blame her for being a little cranky? Imagine waking up every day with snakes on your head. Not exactly a spa day. Now, here's where things get fun. Medusa has made her mark in everything from high fashion to Hollywood blockbusters. Remember Clash of the Titans? She was the standout villain, complete with her creepy snake lair vibe. And in Percy Jackson, she runs a garden gnome emporium. Talk about finding a niche market. Gamers love her too. In popular titles like God of War and Smite, Medusa is a formidable foe, and sometimes even a playable character. And let's not forget her influence in art. Fashion designers have used her image as a statement of boldness and rebellion. Ever seen Versace's logo? Yep, that's Medusa staring back at you in all her glory. In some versions of her story, Medusa's petrifying powers didn't work on women. So maybe she was the original feminist ally, saving her rage for the guys who messed up. Also, her name means guardian or protectress, which is kind of ironic considering most people were running away from her. Legend has it that her snake hair could hiss in harmony, so maybe she had her own built-in soundtrack. Medusa might have started as a cautionary tale, but she's become so much more. A misunderstood legend, a symbol of defiance, and a figure who refuses to be forgotten. She's proof that even in mythology there's always more to the story. And while Medusa's gaze could turn you into stone, our next creature is more likely to drag you into the depths of the sea. Hold your breath, because we're diving straight into the watery abyss to meet the legendary Kraken, a terror so massive it makes even the bravest sailors rethink their life choices. 2. Kraken, the terror of the deep. Let's rewind to the Viking Age, an era of longboats, bearded warriors, and some truly questionable seafood diets. These brave seafarers had plenty to fear: freezing waters, sudden storms, and, of course, the Kraken. Imagine it. You're paddling along, minding your business, when out of nowhere, the ocean's middle finger rises from the depths to ruin your day. The Kraken's origins trace back to medieval Scandinavian folklore, because nothing says bedtime story like a monster that can eat your entire ship. Norse texts like the Urvar Odr saga and Olaus Magnus's Historia de Gentibus Septentrionalibus described the Kraken as an aquatic behemoth, so massive it could double as a real estate investment. Vikings swore this thing wasn't just big, it was mistake it for an island and try to picnic on it big. But here's where things get complicated. This legend wasn't just about terrifying sailors. It was also a coping mechanism for the unpredictable North Atlantic. Think about it. You're a Viking, staring into an endless abyss of salt water and dread. You need something to blame when the sea decides to ruin your voyage. And voila, the Kraken becomes the "it's not me, it's you" of maritime disasters. And let's not forget the Kraken's party trick, creating whirlpools. According to legend, when the Kraken dove, it churned the water so violently that it could drag ships straight to Davy Jones' locker. Realistically, it was probably just underwater currents, or, let's be honest, some very hungover sailors misinterpreting physics. But hey, why blame nature when you can blame a 100-foot squid monster? Now, here's where things get weird. By the 18th century, even scientists got in on the Kraken hype. Carl Linnaeus, the taxonomist who named literally everything, decided to classify the Kraken as a real species in his Systema Naturae. That's right. The man who gave us the scientific name for giraffes also thought giant shipwrecking calamari deserved a spot in the record books. Talk about a wild career choice. And while the Kraken started in Scandinavia, its reputation spread like gossip at a Viking feast. Sailors from all over Europe added their own embellishments, making the creature even scarier with every retelling. What started as a Nordic sea monster became a worldwide celebrity, proving that humans are great at one thing, turning fear into folklore. Now let's talk size, because with the Kraken, bigger is definitely scarier. According to early accounts, this thing wasn't just large, it was biblical. Descriptions painted a creature so enormous it could easily wrap its tentacles around a ship and drag it beneath the waves. Some sailors swore it was bigger than a whale. Others claimed it could be mistaken for an island. Yes, you heard that right, an island. Imagine anchoring your ship for a peaceful rest, only to discover the land beneath you is alive and hungry. And while ancient stories weren't exactly fact-checked, modern science gives us a possible inspiration: the giant squid. Growing up to 40 feet long, it's still no kraken, but it's close enough to make you think twice about skinny dipping in the Atlantic. Pop culture, of course, takes it to the next level. Movies and games have given us krakens so large they could swat an aircraft carrier like a fly. Is it realistic? Probably not. Is it terrifyingly cool? Absolutely. Because when it comes to sea monsters, bigger is always better. Let's face it, the kraken's tentacles are the star of the show. These aren't just your average squid arms, they're weapons of mass destruction. Stories tell of tentacles slithering over the sides of ships, smashing masts, and dragging sailors into the abyss. And if that wasn't enough, it could apparently create whirlpools just by diving. A ship wasn't just dealing with one problem, it was facing a multi-tentacled apocalypse. But what's a kraken without a bit of humor? Imagine one of these legendary beasts going up against a modern submarine. Would it go for the periscope first? Try to figure out the torpedoes? Or maybe it would just be confused and call it a day. Either way, one thing's for sure. The kraken would have been an absolute nightmare for any ship with wooden planks and zero backup plans. And while we're laughing, let's not forget the raw terror those tentacles must have inspired in sailors. They weren't just battling waves and weather, they were battling a force of nature, one that didn't care if you were the captain or the cook. It was equal opportunity doom. Let's get real. Did sailors really spot the kraken? Or were they just overreacting to an extra-large squid having a bad hair day? Spoiler alert, probably the latter. But hey, when you're out at sea for months low on rations and the rum is running dry, every ripple in the water starts to look like a monster auditioning for a horror movie. Turns out, real-life inspirations like the giant squid and colossal squid might be behind these terrifying tales. These deep-sea giants can grow up to 40 feet long, with eyes the size of dinner plates. Imagine seeing one of those tentacles slithering around your boat. You'd probably start yelling, "Kraken," too. And if you thought these squids were harmless, consider this. Their beaks are strong enough to slice through bone. Bone. Suddenly, their reputation as gentle giants doesn't sound so convincing. Early sailor sightings were often fueled by exaggeration, fear, and let's face it, a pinch of drama. For example, sightings of floating debris or breaching whales were often mistaken for monstrous tentacles. One sailor probably shouted, "It's the Kraken," while his crewmates were like, "Dude, that's driftwood." But who's going to argue with the guy holding the spyglass? And then there's the good old Scandinavian whirlpool myth. Back in the day, underwater currents and maelstroms were a mystery to sailors, so naturally they blamed the Kraken for nature's chaos. In reality, these whirlpools were caused by shifting tides and underwater geography, not an angry cephalopod plotting shipwrecks for fun. The line between myth and marine biology blurred over centuries, as tales of the Kraken merged with real-life encounters with the unknown. It's a perfect example of how human curiosity and a healthy dose of paranoia can turn science into a sea monster. Fast forward to today, and the Kraken has undergone the ultimate PR transformation, from a terrifying sea monster to a pop culture superstar. If you've ever yelled, "Release the Kraken," while watching Pirates of the Caribbean, or laughed at a Kraken meme, you've witnessed its glow up firsthand. Movies like Clash of the Titans brought the Kraken to the big screen, complete with CGI tentacles and epic destruction. And let's not forget its appearances in video games like Assassin's Creed or Sea of Thieves, where battling the Kraken is practically a rite of passage. At this point, the Kraken has become less of a monster and more of a pop culture mascot. Who knew a giant squid could have a fan base? Over time, the Kraken evolved from terror-inducing to, dare I say, relatable. In some reimaginings, it's portrayed as a misunderstood creature just trying to protect its home from those pesky humans who keep trespassing. Can you really blame it for swatting away ships like flies? The poor thing probably just wanted some peace and quiet. In fact, even brands love the Kraken. From rum bottles to sports teams, it's become a go-to symbol for strength, mystery, and apparently great marketing. There's even a professional hockey team named the Seattle Kraken. Imagine explaining that to a Viking. Yes, your sea monster is now a logo for people who hit pucks on ice. Let's end with some quirky Kraken trivia, because who doesn't love a monster with a resume this impressive? Did you know the Kraken legend spread from Scandinavia to other maritime cultures, inspiring tales of sea monsters around the globe? It's like the Kraken was the original influencer, except instead of hashtags, it had tentacles. The Kraken's role as a mythological OG didn't stop at folklore. Its stories inspired everything from literature to art, with depictions ranging from terrifying to downright charming. And if you've ever seen a Kraken tattoo, you'll know it's a favorite among people who love both maritime lore and saying, "Yes, I sat through 8 hours of needlework for this." Even today, the Kraken has a special place in pop culture, and let's not forget the memes. Whether it's Release the Kraken or a funny take on its misunderstood nature, this sea monster has managed to stay relevant for centuries. Not bad for a creature that started out as a sailor's worst nightmare. From its Nordic roots to its modern-day stardom, the Kraken proves one thing: you don't need to be real to make waves. If the Kraken ruled the seas with its massive tentacles, our next creature kept a much tighter leash, but on the gates of the underworld. From the watery depths to the fiery abyss, meet Cerberus, the three-headed guardian with a bite as legendary as its bark. Number 3. Cerberus, the three-headed guardian of the underworld. Every legend has a beginning, and for Cerberus, that beginning lies deep within the complex family tree of Greek mythology. Cerberus was no ordinary beast. He was born to Echidna, the fearsome mother of monsters, and Typhon, the towering giant feared even by the gods. This lineage wasn't just fearsome, it was legendary. His siblings included the multi-headed Hydra, the fire-breathing Chimera, and Orthrus, another ferocious watchdog. Clearly, Cerberus came from a family where being terrifying was a birthright. The Greeks viewed these creatures as embodiments of chaos and the natural forces beyond human control. Cerberus, however, was different. While his siblings wreaked havoc, Cerberus was assigned a specific purpose: guarding the gates of the underworld. This role set him apart, tying him not just to terror, but to order. An enforcer of the boundary between the living and the dead. Even his 3 heads carry symbolic weight. Some interpretations see them as representations of the past, present, and future, while others believe they symbolize vigilance, eyes on all sides, ensuring no one could escape unnoticed. Cerberus wasn't just a beast, he was a symbol of power, duty, and the inevitability of death. Cerberus wasn't just a fearsome creature, he was the guardian of the underworld's gates, a role of immense importance in Greek mythology. The underworld, ruled by Hades, was a realm of finality. Souls entered, but they didn't leave, and Cerberus made sure of it. Positioned at the entrance, he served as both protector and enforcer, ensuring that the dead remained within, and the living dared not trespass. This role gave Cerberus an almost divine status, even among monsters. His presence reinforced the authority of Hades and the sanctity of the underworld. To cross Cerberus was to defy the natural order, an act reserved only for the boldest or most desperate of heroes. Those who sought to enter the underworld without permission, like Orpheus and Heracles, knew they would have to face the terrifying 3-headed sentinel first. But Cerberus wasn't just a physical barrier. He was a psychological one. His very presence symbolized the permanence of death, a clear-cut reminder that once you entered the underworld, there was no going back. This made him one of the most feared yet respected figures in Greek mythology, a creature whose role was as profound as it was terrifying. Cerberus may have been the guardian of the underworld, but that didn't stop some of mythology's greatest heroes from daring to face him. These encounters weren't just battles, they were tests of courage, wit, and resilience, defining moments in the stories of those who challenged him. Take Heracles, for instance. As one of his 12 labors, Heracles was tasked with bringing Cerberus to the surface. Armed with nothing but his strength and determination, Heracles managed to wrestle the mighty guardian into submission. The image of the mighty Heracles dragging Cerberus, snarling and snapping, out of the underworld remains one of mythology's most iconic scenes. But Heracles didn't kill Cerberus. He respected the creature's role and returned him to his post, a proof to the mutual respect even between hero and beast. Then there's Orpheus, the musician whose enchanting melodies softened even the fiercest of hearts. When he descended into the underworld to rescue his wife, Eurydice, Orpheus used his lyre to calm Cerberus. For a brief moment, the fearsome watchman became a passive listener, proof that even the most terrifying creatures could be swayed by beauty and art. These encounters didn't just showcase the heroism of those who faced Cerberus, they highlighted the complexity of the creature himself. Cerberus wasn't a mindless monster. He was a guardian doing his duty, one whose role intersected with some of the most profound stories in Greek mythology. Cerberus, despite his fearsome reputation, has some fascinating peculiarities that reveal a more nuanced side to the legendary beast. For example, his name, Cerberus, is thought to derive from an ancient Greek word that could mean spotted. If true, it means Hades, the stern ruler of the underworld, might have named his terrifying three-headed guardian something as mundane as Spot. It's a small detail that adds a surprising touch of humanity to an otherwise serious story. Though primarily known as a figure in Greek mythology, Cerberus has transcended his origins, appearing in works like Dante's Inferno, where he's depicted as a ravenous beast punishing the gluttonous. In modern times, Cerberus has found his way into literature, movies, and video games, often reimagined as a powerful yet misunderstood creature. This adaptability speaks to the enduring appeal of his story. Even his weaknesses hint at his complexity. In the myth of Psyche, Cerberus is bribed with honey cakes, a rare indulgence that contrasts with his otherwise terrifying role. Orpheus used music to soothe him, proving that even the most fearsome guardian could be moved by beauty and art. These moments of vulnerability make Cerberus more than just a monster. They show him as a being capable of experiencing the world beyond his duty, even if only briefly. Just when you thought mythology couldn't get any wilder, we venture from the underworld's loyal guard dog to a creature that seems like someone stitched together a nightmare on a dare. Meet the Chimera, a fire-breathing mashup of lion, goat, and serpent. If Cerberus was built to guard, the Chimera was built to terrify. 4. Chimera, the fiery beast of chaos. Deep in the archives of Greek mythology lies a creature so bizarre, so terrifying, that it could only have come from the wildest imagination of ancient storytellers. Meet the Chimera, a beast that terrorized the lands of Lycia in what is now modern-day Turkey. Born to the monstrous Typhon and Echidna, a couple who could win gold medals in parenting the scariest creatures, the Chimera had some truly infamous siblings: Cerberus, the Hydra, and the Sphinx. Clearly, family reunions weren't for the faint of heart. The Chimera wasn't just a monster, it was a symbol of chaos, a living nightmare that defied reason. Ancient Greeks believed the creature roamed the mountains and plains of Lycia, leaving devastation in its wake. But why such a terrifying mix of traits? The Greeks may have intended the Chimera to embody unpredictability, a literal walking reminder of the untamed dangers lurking in their world. Now let's talk anatomy, because the Chimera was no ordinary beast. It has the body of a lion, the head of a goat sprouting awkwardly from its back, and a tail that was no mere appendage. It ended in a venomous serpent. Oh, and did I mention it could breathe fire? That's right, fire breathing wasn't just for dragons. If you thought your neighbor's barking dog was annoying, imagine this fiery Frankenstein roaming your fields. The lion represented strength, the goat symbolized stubbornness, and the serpent embodied cunning. An unholy trinity designed to terrify anyone who crossed its path. It's as if someone decided to take 3 terrifying creatures and mash them into one monstrosity. And somehow, it worked. The chimera became a living, roaring metaphor for chaos and destruction. According to legend, the chimera made its home in Lycia, wreaking havoc on the local population. Livestock disappeared, fields were scorched, and villages were left in ruins. For the ancient Greeks, the chimera wasn't just a story, it was a warning. It represented the unknown, the dangers hiding beyond the safety of their cities. And for the Lycian people, it became the embodiment of their greatest fears. Imagine being a shepherd, tending your flock, only to see a fire-breathing lion-goat snake charging down the hillside. What do you even do? One ancient tale tells of villagers praying to the gods for protection, hoping for salvation from this unstoppable force. And it wasn't just the destruction, it was the sheer madness of facing something that seemed to defy the very laws of nature. The chimera wasn't just another monster in the pantheon of Greek mythology, it was the stuff of nightmares. A creature so bizarre that it became a symbol of the unpredictable and the uncontrollable. But fear not, this fiery menace wouldn't terrorize Lycia forever, because soon a hero with a winged horse would descend from the heavens, ready to confront the chaos. No monster is without its nemesis. It was Bellerophon, the mortal hero tasked with slaying the chimera. Armed with a divine mission and the winged horse Pegasus, Bellerophon prepared to face the unthinkable. With the guidance of Athena and a bit of luck, he soared into the skies, evading the chimera's flames and sharp claws. Legends say the battle was nothing short of spectacular. Pegasus's aerial agility gave Bellerophon the edge to outmaneuver the beast. With a clever strategy, Bellerophon used a spear tipped with lead. As he plunged it into the chimera's fiery throat, the lead melted, suffocating the monster from within. This brilliant act of ingenuity sealed his place in Greek legend. But even in death, the chimera left its mark. Its myth endured, a testament to the triumph of wit over brute strength and the eternal allure of a hero conquering the impossible. The chimera's story didn't end with its defeat. Its image became synonymous with challenges that seemed insurmountable. In fact, the term chimera is now used to describe something wildly imaginative or unreal, an homage to the creature's impossible existence. The chimera also lives on in art, literature, and even modern science. It's been a favorite in Renaissance paintings, an inspiration for monstrous creations in fantasy novels, and a metaphor for genetic experiments blending different organisms. Far from being a relic of ancient Greece, the chimera has grown into a symbol of creativity, danger, and the triumph of human ingenuity over fear. From the burning chaos of the chimera, we step into a colder, darker realm. Here, beneath the frozen skies of Norse legend, lies a creature whose very existence terrified the gods themselves. Meet Fenrir, the beast whose jaws were said to close not just on flesh, but on the fate of the world. Number 5. Fenrir, the Doombringer of Asgard. In the sacred stories of Norse mythology lies Fenrir, a wolf so terrifying that even the gods feared him. Born from the trickster god Loki and the giantess Angerboda, Fenrir wasn't your average pup. His siblings were no less intimidating. Jörmungandr, the serpent destined to encircle the earth, and Hel, the ruler of the underworld. Together, this chaotic family spelled doom for the Norse gods. From the moment of his birth, Fenrir's fate was intertwined with destruction. The seers prophesied that he would play a pivotal role in Ragnarok, the cataclysmic battle that would end the world. But the gods didn't just sit idly by. They decided Fenrir needed to be controlled before his destiny came to pass. The gods, wary of Fenrir's growing power, decided to bind him. But chaining the wolf who could swallow the sun wasn't exactly easy. Their first attempts with ordinary chains failed miserably. Fenrir snapped them like they were made of string. Finally, the dwarves forged Gleipnir, a magical ribbon stronger than any chain. It was made from 6 impossible things: the sound of a cat's footsteps, a woman's beard, a mountain's roots, a fish's breath, a bird's spit, and the sinews of a bear. Don't ask how they got those ingredients. Let's just say it involved creativity. When the gods presented Gleipnir to Fenrir, he grew suspicious. He agreed to be bound only if one of them would place a hand in his mouth as a sign of trust. Enter Tyr, the bravest of the gods, who volunteered his hand. As Gleipnir tightened and Fenrir realized he'd been tricked, he bit down, leaving Tyr one-handed, but earning his place as the god of bravery. Bound but not forgotten, Fenrir waited, and when Ragnarok began, he broke free. This wasn't just any jailbreak. This was the wolf's moment of prophecy. As the world burned and the heavens shattered, Fenrir faced Odin himself. The All-Father, leader of the gods, fell to the wolf's jaws in a scene that defined chaos. But Fenrir's triumph was short-lived. Odin's son Vidar avenged his father by tearing Fenrir apart with his bare hands, or depending on the version, with a very sturdy shoe. Either way, the wolf met his end as the cosmos collapsed around him. Fenrir wasn't a lone wolf, though his family reunions were probably awkward at best. His brother, Jormungandr, was busy choking on his own tail as he encircled the world, while his sister, Hel, ruled over the realm of the dead. Together, they were the ultimate end-of-the-world team, each playing a crucial role in Ragnarok. Their father, Loki, might have been proud, or maybe just amused. After all, when you're the god of mischief, sowing chaos runs in the family. Fenrir's legacy didn't end with Norse mythology. Today, he's become a cultural icon, a symbol of rebellion, inevitability, and raw power. He appears in video games like God of War and Assassin's Creed Valhalla, where his story is reimagined for modern audiences. Heavy metal bands and tattoo enthusiasts alike have embraced Fenrir as an emblem of untamed ferocity. From ancient tales to contemporary media, Fenrir's image has shifted. No longer just a destroyer, he's often portrayed as a misunderstood anti-hero, trapped by fate and fighting against the gods who feared him. Now let's lighten the mood with some startling Fenrir facts. Did you know he was said to grow so massive that his upper jaw touched the heavens while his lower jaw scraped the earth? Imagine the dental bill for that wolf. And here's a twist. Fenrir isn't all doom and gloom. In some modern adaptations, he's portrayed as a tragic figure, a creature betrayed by the gods and bound not for his deeds, but for the fear of what he might do. Finally, Fenrir's name has inspired countless stories, from Norse sagas to pop culture hits. Whether he's the ultimate villain or a misunderstood rebel, one thing's for sure. Fenrir's legend is as big as the wolf himself. Just when you thought mythology couldn't conjure a creature more terrifying than a wolf, destined to end the world, let me introduce you to Typhon. A monstrosity so immense and chaotic that even the gods trembled at the mere mention of his name. If Fenrir tested the courage of gods, Typhon shattered their confidence, ready for the storm that no one, literally no one, could outrun. Number 6. Typhon, the father of all monsters. In the depths of ancient Greek myth, Typhon was born as the ultimate challenger to the Olympian gods. His parents? None other than Gaia, the earth herself, and Tartarus, the deep abyss of chaos. Typhon wasn't just another monster, he was Gaia's ace card, created to exact revenge against Zeus and his fellow Olympians for imprisoning the Titans. His very existence was a declaration of war against order, the embodiment of primordial chaos refusing to be tamed. But Typhon wasn't an ordinary rebel. He represented nature's fury at its rawest, an uncontrollable force that defied even the mightiest gods. With his monstrous lineage, Typhon wasn't just another mythological creature. He was the culmination of all fears wrapped into one terrifying being. Typhon wasn't just frightening, he was a walking nightmare. Imagine a creature so colossal that his head scraped the heavens. Ancient texts describe him with serpentine legs that slithered and hissed, 100 dragon heads sprouting from his shoulders, and eyes that burned like molten lava. His fiery breath could melt mountains, and his voice was said to be a cacophony of every sound imaginable, from roars and hisses to human screams. Each detail of Typhon's appearance was designed to terrify, but it also symbolized the uncontrollable chaos he embodied. He wasn't just big. He was an earthquake, a hurricane, and a volcanic eruption all rolled into one. When Typhon rose to challenge the Olympians, it wasn't just a battle. It was an apocalyptic showdown. Typhon initially caught Zeus off guard, managing to disarm the king of the gods by ripping away his sinews and imprisoning him in a cave. For a brief moment, it seemed chaos had won. But Zeus wasn't out for long. With the help of Hermes, he regained his strength and launched a counterattack that shook the cosmos. Lightning bolts flew, mountains crumbled, and the heavens roared as Zeus unleashed his fury. Finally, Zeus defeated Typhon, hurling him into the abyss and sealing him beneath Mount Etna in Sicily. It wasn't just a victory for Zeus, it was a triumph for order over chaos, solidifying his rule over the cosmos. Typhon's defeat didn't mean he was gone for good. According to myth, his body was trapped beneath Mount Etna, and his rage is what fuels the volcano's eruptions. Every plume of smoke, every river of lava was seen as Typhon's anger boiling over, a reminder that chaos could never be entirely contained. For the ancient Greeks, this story explained natural disasters, giving a mythical face to the destructive forces of nature. Typhon wasn't just a monster. He became a way to make sense of the unpredictable and the uncontrollable. Even in defeat, Typhon left his mark. As the father of some of the most infamous creatures in Greek mythology, his legacy of terror lived on. The Chimera, Hydra, Cerberus, and even the Nemean lion were all said to be his offspring. These creatures continued his mission of chaos, spreading fear across the mortal and divine realms alike. It's no wonder Typhon earned the title Father of Monsters. His progeny ensured that no hero in Greek mythology ever had it easy, turning every tale of triumph into a fight against the chaos he embodied. Fast forward to today, and Typhon's story is far from forgotten. From video games like God of War to novels like Percy Jackson, Typhon has been reimagined as the ultimate boss battle. His legacy as the embodiment of chaos has made him a favorite in fantasy and mythology-inspired media. Even beyond entertainment, Typhon's name has become synonymous with untamable forces. Heavy metal bands use him as a symbol of rebellion, and his image has even found its way into art and tattoos, representing strength and defiance. Ancient Greeks used Typhon's story to explain natural disasters, like volcanoes and storms, long before modern science. He's often humorously referred to as the world's worst dad for fathering a lineup of unruly monsters. Imagine Typhon in therapy today. So, Zeus threw a mountain on me, and my kids, they're all troublemakers. Just when you think the terrors of mythology couldn't get any worse, we move from the mightiest of monsters to something far more cunning and lethal. Deep within the narrow regions of the sea, hidden where sailors least expect, lies a creature whose name alone strikes dread into even the bravest hearts. Brace yourself, because we're about to meet Scylla, the nightmare that turned ancient waters into deadly traps. Number 7. Scylla, the devourer of the depths. Before she became a terror of the seas, Scylla was a beautiful sea nymph, a daughter of sea deities Phorcys and Ceto. In some versions of the myth, she lived a peaceful life, unaware of the chaos her name would one day inspire. But her transformation into a monster wasn't an accident. It was a product of jealousy, love, and curses, a recurring theme in Greek mythology. The enchantress Circe, known for her own tangled relationships, plays a pivotal role here. Fueled by jealousy over Scylla's suitors, Circe cursed her, turning her into a creature so horrifying that sailors would tremble at the mere mention of her name. Scylla didn't reign alone. Her infamous lair was the Strait of Messina, a narrow waterway between Sicily and mainland Italy. On the opposite side resided Charybdis, a whirlpool-like creature that devoured entire ships. Together, they created an inescapable gauntlet for ancient sailors. To choose one meant risking certain death from the other. This gave rise to the saying between a rock and a hard place, a phrase we still use today to describe impossible choices. Once cursed, Scylla became the stuff of nightmares. Imagine a creature with 6 strange heads, each with 3 rows of sharp teeth, perched atop 12 tentacle-like legs. She was no longer the beautiful nymph she once was. She was now a relentless predator of the seas. Sailors approaching her lair were doomed to encounter her insatiable hunger, as she plucked men from their ships with her monstrous heads. But Scylla's weird transformation was more than just a physical one. It was symbolic. She became a living representation of the dangers that sailors couldn't control, an embodiment of the chaos hidden beneath the waves. To those navigating the Strait of Messina, her name struck fear and reverence alike. Her monstrous form may have been exaggerated, but it served its purpose, a dire warning to respect the unpredictable nature of the sea. Scylla's reputation was cemented in the tales of legendary heroes. Odysseus, on his journey home in the Odyssey, faced the ultimate dilemma: sail too close to Charybdis and risk his entire ship being swallowed, or brave Scylla's reach and lose 6 of his men. Odysseus chose the latter, sacrificing part of his crew to save the rest. The screams of his men haunted him, a reminder of the impossible decisions thrust upon heroes. Jason and the Argonauts also crossed paths with Scylla during their search for the Golden Fleece. Guided by Hera and other gods, they narrowly escaped her clutches, further cementing her role as a symbol of trials faced by the brave. Even today, Scylla's legend lives on. From literature to video games, she remains a figure of awe and terror. In films, she's often depicted as the ultimate sea monster, her 6 heads lunging dramatically at hapless ships. In games like Assassin's Creed or Smite, Scylla takes on new forms, reimagined for modern audiences. But she's not just about fear, she's a reminder of the beauty and unpredictability of the sea. And let's not forget her humorous reimaginings. Writers and artists have explored Scylla's misunderstood side, portraying her as a tragic figure cursed against her will. Who wouldn't sympathize with someone trying to navigate life with 6 uncontrollable heads? Did you know that Scylla might have been inspired by jagged rocks or whirlpools near the Strait of Messina? Ancient sailors likely mistook natural hazards for living monsters. And here's a quirky tidbit. Her name has been used for naval ships, science fiction monsters, and even marine biology species. Scylla's influence has spread far and wide, from mythology to memes. One of the funniest modern takes on Scylla imagines her debating with Charybdis about who's scarier, like 2 roommates competing for the title of worst neighbor. But jokes aside, Scylla remains a captivating figure, a testament to the enduring power of myth to explain the unexplainable. From the jagged cliffs and monstrous whirlpools of Scylla's domain, we now venture into the endless seas where another legend calls, one of unfathomable depths and primal might. Prepare yourself for Leviathan, the colossal beast said to rule the oceans with unmatched ferocity, embodying the chaos and mystery of the waters it calls home. 8. Leviathan, the chaos beneath. When it comes to sea monsters, Leviathan stands as the original heavyweight champion of the deep. This biblical beast wasn't just massive. It was a divine symbol of chaos, danger, and untamed power. Mentioned in texts like the Book of Job and Psalms, Leviathan was believed to churn the seas with its mighty tail, its scales impervious to weapons, and its breath capable of igniting flames on the ocean's surface. Ancient sailors didn't just fear the unknown, they feared Leviathan waiting below. In the biblical setting, Leviathan wasn't just a scary bedtime story. It symbolized the ultimate challenge to order, a creature that could only be subdued by divine intervention. But it wasn't alone. Mythologies worldwide have similar figures. The Norse Jormungandr, the serpent encircling the world, and Tiamat from Mesopotamian tales, a chaos dragon vanquished by the gods. Leviathan's presence wasn't just about fear, it was a reminder of humanity's place against the forces of nature and the divine. During the Middle Ages, Leviathan's legend shaped how people viewed the oceans. Maps from the era were filled with depictions of monstrous sea creatures in unexplored waters, often stamped with warnings like, "Here be dragons." Leviathan was the embodiment of every sailor's worst nightmare, a beast so enormous it could capsize a ship with a flick of its tail. And the scariest part? Many believed it was real. But here's an ironic twist for you. While Leviathan was this terrifying symbol of chaos, some texts prophesied that, at the end of days, it would be served as dinner for the righteous. Yes, this harbinger of destruction might end up as the world's most terrifying seafood platter. Today, Leviathan inspires everything from literature to blockbuster movies. Think of the massive monsters in Pacific Rim, or even the ominous sea creatures in Pirates of the Caribbean. Some scholars even suggest that real-life sightings of giant squids or whales sparked the legend. So, was Leviathan a divine terror or just the ancient world's exaggerated whale tale? Either way, it's left an indelible mark on humanity's imagination. 9. Sphinx, the riddle keeper. If you've ever had to answer a question so tricky it made you sweat, congratulations, you've faced your own Sphinx moment. This mythical figure, with the body of a lion and the head of a human, wasn't just a guardian in ancient lore. It was the ultimate trivia master, ready to stump anyone bold or foolish enough to approach. In Egyptian mythology, the Sphinx wasn't a terror but a protector, a symbol of strength and wisdom. Take the Great Sphinx of Giza, for example, a colossal guardian watching over the pyramids. It was a monument to the gods, believed to embody Ra, the sun god, and safeguard sacred spaces from evil forces. It's less, riddle me this, and more, don't mess with me. But leave it to the Greeks to turn the Sphinx into a villain. Their version wasn't content to silently guard temples. This Sphinx loved a good riddle and had no patience for wrong answers. The stakes? If you guessed wrong, you didn't just lose, you died. Her most famous riddle, what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening, stumped countless travelers before Oedipus finally cracked it. His reward? Watching the Sphinx melodramatically throw herself off a cliff. I guess you might be also thinking about the riddle. Ha ha ha, it's human from crawling to walking on 2 legs and then using a stick as walking stick, which is the 3rd leg. The Sphinx became a symbol of mystery and intellect, influencing art, literature, and culture for centuries. Today, you'll find its influence everywhere, from ancient carvings to modern escape rooms. And sure, it's been softened over time. Less murderous gatekeeper, more enigmatic challenge. But back in the day, the Sphinx wasn't playing games, it was deciding your fate. 10. Hydra, the multi-headed nightmare. Just when you think you've conquered a problem, another one pops up. Welcome to the Hydra's world. This multi-headed serpent from Greek mythology didn't just represent a challenge, it was the physical embodiment of chaos. And trust me, this creature wasn't playing fair. Born from Typhon and Echidna, basically the power couple of Greek monster making, the Hydra hid in the swamps of Lerna. Its claim to fame? Every time you chopped off one of its heads, 2 more would grow back. You could imagine how well that went for anyone foolish enough to take it on. Then Hercules showed up, tasked with slaying the Hydra as one of his 12 labors. Armed with brute strength and a lot of frustration, Hercules quickly realized this wasn't a one-man job. Thankfully, his nephew Iolaus had a bright idea, cauterizing the necks to stop the heads from regenerating. Together, they turned the Hydra into a fiery cautionary tale. The Hydra wasn't just scary, it was a metaphor for the unsolvable problems of life. Even its venom was legendary. Hercules dipped his arrows in it, making them fatal for any enemy unlucky enough to cross him. Today, the Hydra lives on in pop culture, from Marvel's Hydra organization to video game bosses that love to respawn. And here's a startling thought. What if the Hydra was just misunderstood? I mean, imagine dealing with a bad haircut that never stops growing back. That's a nightmare in itself. 11. Minotaur, the beast of the labyrinth. The Minotaur story is a tragic one, wrapped in myth and mystery. Born of a curse placed upon King Minos of Crete, the creature was half man, half bull, a monstrous reminder of human folly and divine retribution. Here's how it all started. Poseidon, the god of the sea, sent King Minos a magnificent white bull as a sign of favor. But Minos, blinded by greed, refused to sacrifice the bull back to the gods, as tradition demanded. Poseidon wasn't exactly the forgiving type, so he cursed Minos by making his wife, Pasiphae, fall in love with the bull. Yes, fall in love. The result? The Minotaur, a creature as terrifying as its origins were bizarre. Trapped in a body that was neither fully man nor beast, the Minotaur was confined to a labyrinth designed by the legendary craftsman Daedalus. This maze wasn't just a prison, it was an inescapable fortress of endless corridors. The beast roamed, waiting for its next meal, which came in the form of human sacrifices from Athens, a grim tribute forced upon them by King Minos after defeating the Athenians in battle. But the wearisome thing is that the labyrinth wasn't just a death trap. It was so complex that even Daedalus himself supposedly struggled to navigate it. The Minotaur became the stuff of nightmares, its legend symbolizing both the wrath of the gods and humanity's endless struggle against the unknown. Then Theseus showed up as the hero of the story. Armed with courage and a ball of thread, thanks to Ariadne, Minos' sympathetic daughter, Theseus ventured into the labyrinth. With every twist and turn, he got closer to his monstrous opponent. When they finally met, it wasn't just strength that helped Theseus defeat the Minotaur, it was strategy. The ball of thread ensured he found his way back out after slaying the beast, marking one of Greek mythology's most famous triumphs. Fun fact, the idea of the labyrinth has inspired everything from actual maze designs to psychological metaphors. And for a creature so terrifying, the Minotaur has become an unlikely pop culture icon, appearing everywhere from video games to tattoos. 12. The Gorgons, Sisters of Stone and Survival. When we hear Gorgon, Medusa usually steals the spotlight, but her 2 sisters, Stheno and Uriel, have their own share of mythological intrigue. Together, this trio of terrifying figures embodied the fears and mysteries of the ancient world. However, while Medusa is famous for being mortal and unfortunately headless, Stheno and Uriel were immortal, ensuring their legend endured far beyond Medusa's tragic tale. The Gorgons were born from the primordial sea gods Phorcys and Ceto, making them siblings to a host of other monstrous creatures, including Echidna and Cerberus. Their family tree reads more like a who's who of Greek horrors than a typical genealogy. Stheno and Uriel, the elder Gorgons, shared Medusa's signature look, a tangle of living snakes for hair, sharp fangs, and a gaze that could turn even the bravest warrior to stone. Yet Stheno and Uriel were far more than Medusa's backup singers. They were renowned for their savage nature. Stheno, in particular, was known as the most bloodthirsty of the trio. Uriel, on the other hand, was said to have an otherworldly wail so powerful that it could shatter the resolve of any who dared face her. Together they guarded their sanctuary in a remote part of the world, ensuring no one crossed them lightly. Unlike Medusa, Stheno and Uriel didn't have to worry about meeting their doom at the hands of a mortal hero. Their immortality made them even more fearsome, as they could not be outlasted or defeated. While Medusa's story has an air of tragedy and victimhood, Stheno and Uriel were unapologetically fierce. They weren't cursed mortals, they were born as symbols of primal power and danger, and they wielded that power with deadly precision. One myth recounts that even the gods steered clear of the elder Gorgons. Their home in the far reaches of the world, often described as a rocky, desolate island, was avoided by mortals and deities alike. Unlike Medusa, who was often painted as a tragic figure in need of understanding, Stheno and Uriel didn't demand sympathy. They demanded fear and respect. While Medusa's confrontation with Perseus is legendary, Stheno and Uriel's stories often fade into the background. Some versions of the myth suggest they tried to avenge Medusa's death by pursuing Perseus, though their efforts were thwarted by the tools and divine assistance he carried. Others say they continued their solitary existence, forever guarding their domain and maintaining the terror they inspired. Interestingly, ancient depictions of the Gorgons often emphasize their monstrous features over any individual personality. Carvings on temples and shields showed grotesque faces, with bulging eyes and gaping mouths, meant to ward off evil spirits. In this sense, the Gorgons served a dual purpose. They were both figures of fear and protectors against greater dangers. Stheno and Uriel might not have the star power of their mortal sister, but their influence remained significant. They symbolized the untouchable, the untamed, and the immortal forces of nature. Over time, their presence became a reminder of humanity's vulnerability in the face of overwhelming power. From ancient art to modern storytelling, the Gorgons collectively represent more than just terror. They embody the idea that some forces are beyond human understanding and control. Whether as fierce guardians or eternal enigmas, Stheno and Uriel stand alongside Medusa as icons of Greek mythology. Fun fact: in ancient Greece, Gorgon imagery was used on shields and armor not just for decoration, but as a protective symbol. The fearsome visage was thought to ward off enemies and evil spirits, making the Gorgons both terrifying foes and unlikely allies. 13. Basilisk, the king of serpents. The basilisk wasn't just snake, it was the snake, a creature of nightmares in medieval period. Known as the king of serpents, the basilisk was said to have the power to kill with a single glance. If you somehow avoided its deadly stare, its venomous breath could still take you down. Basically, the basilisk was like nature's ultimate flex. The stories of its origins were just as wild. According to legend, the basilisk was born when a rooster laid an egg, stay with me here, and a toad incubated it. Yes, a rooster egg hatched by a toad. It doesn't get much weirder than that. This strange backstory only added to the basilisk's mystique, making it the star of countless cautionary tales. But even this terrifying creature had a weakness: roosters. The crow of a rooster was believed to kill a basilisk instantly. Imagine being a creature of ultimate destruction, only to be undone by a farm animal. And if that wasn't ironic enough, medieval adventurers were said to carry mirrors to reflect the basilisk's deadly gaze back at it, essentially making it the victim of its own powers. Fun fact: the basilisk wasn't just feared, it became a metaphor for unstoppable threats. Shakespeare even referenced it in his plays. And while we now know it wasn't real, the basilisk's legend continues to influence modern stories, from Harry Potter to Dungeons & Dragons. 14. Griffin. The The treasure guardian. When it comes to mythical creatures that scream, "Touch my stuff and you'll regret it," the griffin takes the crown. This legendary beast from Greek mythology was a majestic hybrid. A lion's body, the symbol of land-based strength, paired with the head, talons, and wings of an eagle, symbolizing dominance in the skies. Essentially, it was the original multitasker, built to guard treasures and intimidate anyone who dared get too close. Griffins were believed to fiercely protect vast hoards of gold and jewels, often hidden in sacred or remote locations. But some historians think the legend might have started when ancient travelers stumbled upon fossils of Protoceratops dinosaurs. With their beak-like skulls and intimidating stature, it's easy to see how someone might have looked at those remains and thought, yup, definitely a winged lion guarding treasure. But the griffin wasn't just about treasure and terror. By the time the Middle Ages rolled around, it had evolved into a symbol of nobility, faithfulness, and strength, often appearing on coats of arms and cathedral carvings. However, that whole guardian of valuables vibe stuck, and to this day, the griffin is synonymous with vigilance and power. Fun fact, griffins were said to mate for life, and if one partner died, the other would never remarry or remate. Even mythical creatures can teach us a thing or two about loyalty. 15. Manticore, the nightmare predator. Straight out of Persian mythology, the manticore is like a bad dream you just can't wake up from. Picture this: the body of a lion, the face of a human with a creepy smile, and a tail that's either a scorpion stinger or covered in venomous spines. Oh, and its name literally means man-eater. Subtle? Not in the slightest. The manticore wasn't just scary, it was an apex predator in every sense. Stories described it as hiding in the wilderness, waiting to ambush unsuspecting travelers. Unlike your average predator, it didn't leave bones, clothing, or even souvenirs behind. Everything about this creature screamed, "Don't go wandering into the woods unless you've updated your will." Medieval scholars couldn't resist adding their flair to the legend. Some claimed the manticore could shoot its tail spines like arrows, making it the ultimate ranged predator. But why create such a terrifying creature? One theory is that it was a way to warn people about the dangers of the untamed wilderness, because if wild animals didn't scare you, a man-eating lion-human hybrid probably would. Fun fact, some versions of the manticore gave it 3 rows of teeth. Whether it needed them for efficiency or just to intimidate, we'll never know. But let's be real, its dental hygiene routine would have been terrifying. 16. Bigfoot, the forest phantom. Unlike the griffin or manticore, Bigfoot isn't an ancient myth, it's a modern-day obsession. Also known as Sasquatch, this towering, ape-like creature supposedly roams the forests of North America. It doesn't have wings, venomous tails, or treasure, but it does have one thing no other creature on this list has mastered: a mysterious knack for dodging every camera ever pointed at it. The roots of Bigfoot can be traced back to indigenous folklore, where tales of large, human-like creatures have been passed down for centuries. But Bigfoot's rise to fame came in 1958 when construction workers in Bluff Creek, California found massive footprints. Cue the media frenzy, grainy videos, blurry photos, and endless debates about whether Bigfoot is real or just the world's longest-running practical joke. Believers argue that Bigfoot might be an undiscovered species, possibly a distant relative of Gigantopithecus, a prehistoric giant ape. Skeptics, however, blame hoaxes, overactive imaginations, and too much time spent in the woods. Regardless of where you stand, one thing's for sure: Bigfoot has become a cultural phenomenon, inspiring documentaries, merchandise, and even themed festivals. Fun fact, many Bigfoot sightings include reports of a foul smell, earning it nicknames like skunk ape. So, if you ever smell something funky in the forest, it might be Bigfoot, or maybe it's just time to replace your hiking boots. Number 17, Mothman, West Virginia's winged weirdo. Let's set the scene. It's 1966, and Point Pleasant, West Virginia is just your average small town, quiet, peaceful, probably too many casseroles at potlucks. And then, boom. Enter the Mothman, a flying humanoid with glowing red eyes and a wingspan big enough to blot out the sun, or at least terrify the locals. Spotted near an old TNT factory, this creature wasn't exactly subtle. Imagine you're on a late-night drive, and suddenly you see what looks like a man-bird hybrid giving you the side eye. That's the kind of terror we're talking about here. What really gets people about Mothman is his timing. He has this uncanny knack for showing up before disasters, like he's the Grim Reaper's chatty cousin. The most famous case? The collapse of the Silver Bridge in 1967. Witnesses claimed they saw Mothman in the weeks leading up to the tragedy. And when the bridge fell, taking 46 lives with it, the legend was cemented. Some say he was a warning sign, others think he was just a creepy bystander. Either way, Mothman wasn't winning Citizen of the Year. These days, Mothman has gone from local terror to small-town celebrity. Point Pleasant even holds an annual festival in his honor, complete with a 12-foot-tall statue. Nothing says we've come to terms with our trauma like a giant metal version of the thing that freaked you out. Fun fact, despite his terrifying origins, Mothman's cultural footprint is huge. He's inspired movies, books, and enough memes to keep the internet buzzing. Maybe he's not a bad guy after all, just misunderstood. 18. Loch Ness Monster, the OG cryptid. If cryptids had resumes, Nessie would have the most experience. The Loch Ness Monster, affectionately nicknamed Nessie, is the undisputed queen of Scotland's folklore. First making waves, pun intended, in 1933, she was spotted by a couple driving along the loch. They described a massive creature with a long neck and humps. Naturally, instead of calling it a day and leaving Nessie alone, the world decided to obsess over her for the next century. Loch Ness itself is the perfect stage for a creature like Nessie. It's over 700 feet deep and stretches 23 miles, meaning there's plenty of room for a camera-shy cryptid to hide. The infamous surgeon's photograph from 1934, a grainy black and white shot of what looks like a dinosaur's neck sticking out of the water, only added fuel to the fire. Of course, decades later, it turned out to be a hoax involving a toy submarine, but by then, Nessie was already a global star. What's wild is how Nessie continues to draw people in. Scientists have conducted sonar scans, underwater explorations, and drone surveys. So far, no definitive proof, but plenty of believers. Some think she's a plesiosaur that survived extinction. Others say she's an eel the size of a school bus. And then there are the skeptics who think Nessie is just a floating log with good PR. Fun fact, tourism around Loch Ness rakes in millions every year, proving that even if Nessie isn't real, her legend is big business. If she does exist, she's probably laughing at all of us from her underwater hideout. 19. Chupacabra, the Latin American vampire. Now let's talk about the chupacabra, aka the goat sucker. If you've got livestock, this creature is your worst nightmare. First reported in Puerto Rico in the 1990s, the chupacabra quickly became the stuff of legends and sleepless farmers. Descriptions vary, but the general consensus is a hairless reptilian beast with spines running down its back and a face only a mother could love. What makes the chupacabra terrifying isn't just its looks, it's what it does. Farmers started finding their animals dead, completely drained of blood, with puncture wounds in their necks. Naturally, people didn't chalk it up to a bad night for coyotes. Instead, they pointed fingers at the chupacabra, the ultimate rural terror. But here's where it gets fun. The chupacabra is basically the cryptid equivalent of a ghost story that got out of hand. Sightings spread across Latin America, then to the southern US, with each account getting wilder. Some said it hopped like a kangaroo. Others swore it had glowing red eyes. A few even claimed it had wings. By this point, the chupacabra wasn't just a monster, it was a shapeshifter with commitment issues. Fun fact, in some areas, the chupacabra is also known as the skunk ape due to its awful smell. So if you ever catch a whiff of something foul in the woods, maybe don't investigate, or bring a really big flashlight. 20. Jersey Devil, New Jersey's unwanted mascot. If New Jersey ever wanted a mystical being to embody its chaotic energy, it found one in the Jersey Devil. This winged creature, said to haunt the Pine Barrens, comes with a bizarre description. A horse's head, bat-like wings, cloven hooves, and a scream that'll make you question your life choices. It's not just weird, it's New Jersey weird. The legend of the Jersey Devil dates back to the 1700s. The story goes that a woman named Deborah Leeds, already exhausted from raising 12 kids, declared her 13th child would be the devil. Whether this was a curse or just hyperbole, the baby was born, transformed into a monster, and flew up the chimney. Imagine your newborn skipping diapers and heading straight into horror legend. The Pine Barrens, a dense and eerie forest, became the Jersey Devil's stomping grounds. Farmers blamed it for livestock deaths, locals reported blood-curdling screams at night, and the occasional sighting kept the legend alive. Even in the early 20th century, sightings of the Jersey Devil caused a full-blown panic, with newspapers calling it everything from an escaped kangaroo to the literal spawn of Satan. Fun fact, in 1938, the Jersey Devil was declared the official state demon of New Jersey. No, really. If that doesn't scream state pride, what does? 21. Skinwalker, the cursed shapeshifter. Let's move to the southwest, where the Navajo legend of the Skinwalker haunts the deserts. This isn't your run-of-the-mill shapeshifter, it's a witch who can transform into animals, often for evil purposes. The Navajo people regard skinwalkers with fear and reverence, and even speaking about them is said to invite bad luck. The origin of the Skinwalker legend is tied to witchcraft. According to Navajo folklore, a person becomes a skinwalker by committing an unthinkable act, like murdering a close relative. In exchange, they gain the ability to take on the form of animals, wolves, coyotes, even birds, usually to carry out their dark intentions. What makes skinwalkers terrifying is their ability to mimic human voices. Imagine hearing your name called from the woods, only to realize it's not your friend, but something much darker. Skinwalkers are also said to curse their victims, causing illness or misfortune. For many Navajo, skinwalkers aren't just myths, they're a disturbing part of reality. Fun fact, Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, named after this legend, is a hotspot for paranormal activity, with reports of UFOs, strange creatures, and other unexplained phenomena. Whether it's cursed land or just a great marketing gimmick, it's one of the spookiest places in America. 22. Yeti, the abominable snowman. High in the icy peaks of the Himalayas, the Yeti, also known as the abominable snowman, prowls the snow-covered wilderness. Described as a massive ape-like creature with shaggy white fur, the Yeti has been part of Himalayan folklore for centuries. Unlike its North American cousin, Bigfoot, the Yeti is less elusive in the myths. Villagers often view it as a spirit of the mountains, one that's not always friendly. The Yeti first caught Western attention in the 19th century, when explorers began hearing stories from local Sherpas about a mysterious creature roaming the peaks. Footprints in the snow, sometimes as large as 13 inches, added fuel to the fire. By the 20th century, the Yeti had become a media sensation, with expeditions mounted to find evidence of its existence. Spoiler: no definitive proof, but plenty of blurry photos. Some believe the Yeti could be a relic of a prehistoric species, like the Gigantopithecus. Others think it's just a case of mistaken identity, maybe a bear or even a human mountaineer. Either way, the Yeti remains one of the most famous cryptids, inspiring movies, books, and even plush toys. Fun fact, Sir Edmund Hillary, the first man to climb Mount Everest, also led an expedition to find the Yeti. While he didn't find the creature, he did bring back a supposed Yeti scalp, later revealed to be made of goat hair. Close enough? 23. Flatwoods Monster, West Virginia's alien ambush. West Virginia seems to have a knack for hosting bizarre creatures, and the Flatwoods Monster is no exception. Picture it, September 12, 1952. A couple of kids see something streak across the evening sky like a fiery comet. Naturally, instead of running in the opposite direction like sensible people, they decide to investigate. They grab an adult or two, head into the woods, and stumble upon it. A 10-foot-tall figure with glowing eyes, claw-like hands, and a face that looked like it had been sculpted by someone who hated faces. The group claimed the creature was accompanied by a pungent, metallic odor, and its glowing eyes practically burned into their memories. Many believed it was an alien, its craft having crash-landed nearby. Skeptics, though, dismissed it as a barn owl caught in the glare of flashlights. Barn owl or not, you try walking through the woods at night and seeing glowing eyes staring back at you without losing your nerve. Fun fact, the Flatwoods Monster scared the witnesses so much that one boy was reportedly treated for hysteria. I mean, can you blame him? He wasn't ready for an impromptu X-Files audition. The Flatwoods Monster became a local legend, inspiring toys, costumes, and even an annual festival. Whether it was an alien, a misidentified owl, or just a really bad prank, one thing is certain: West Virginia knows how to deliver a good old-fashioned extraterrestrial mystery. 24. Bunyip, Australia's wetland terror. Australia is already packed with things designed to kill you. Snakes, spiders, and let's not even talk about kangaroos with anger issues. But the bunyip takes the cake. This creature of Aboriginal lore is said to lurk in swamps, rivers, and billabongs, waiting for unsuspecting prey. Its name roughly translates to devil or evil spirit, so you know it's not the cuddly kind of monster. Descriptions of the bunyip vary wildly. Sometimes it's a massive amphibian, other times it's a dog-headed beast, and occasionally it's just a terrifying shadow. What's consistent is its roar. Witnesses claim the bunyip emits a blood-curdling bellow that can freeze you in your tracks. Imagine hearing that while out fishing. Forget the catch of the day, you'd be the catch. Aboriginal stories often describe the bunyip as a warning to stay away from certain waters. Given Australia's habit of hiding crocodiles and venomous creatures everywhere, this seems like sound advice. But some scholars suggest the bunyip might be rooted in prehistoric sightings. Perhaps early Australians stumbled across the fossils of a giant extinct marsupial and let their imaginations run wild. Fun fact, in the 19th century, European settlers got so caught up in the bunyip hype that they claimed to have found its skull. It turned out to be a deformed horse or calf skull. But hey, points for creativity. Today, the bunyip is part of Australia's folklore tapestry. Whether it's a myth, a misidentified animal, or just an excuse to avoid murky waters, the bunyip is a testament to the human love of a good scare. 25. Thunderbird, the stormbringer. If you ever hear thunder rolling across the plains, it might not just be the weather. Native American mythology gives us the thunderbird, a colossal bird with wings so powerful they could whip up storms. Think of it as the sky's way of saying, "Don't mess with me." The thunderbird isn't just about destruction, though. In many native traditions, it's a protector spirit, a guardian of balance and harmony. Tribes like the Sioux and Ojibwe told stories of how the thunderbird punished evil beings and brought rain to nourish the earth. It wasn't all doom and gloom. Sometimes, it was a hero. Sightings of enormous birds have been reported in the United States for centuries. Some suggest these could be exaggerated accounts of condors or other large birds, but legends have a way of making creatures larger than life. One 19th century report claimed a thunderbird carried off a child, though skeptics point out that eyewitness accounts were often as reliable as a bad game of telephone. Fun fact, in 1890, two Arizona cowboys allegedly shot a giant bird with a wingspan of over 30 feet. The photographic evidence has since vanished, leading some to call it an early example of fake news. The thunderbird has since spread its wings into popular culture, appearing in everything from novels to sports team mascots. Whether you see it as a harbinger of storms or a symbol of protection, one thing's for sure, the thunderbird is one legendary bird you wouldn't want to mess with or try to photograph. 26. Dover Demon, the two-night terror. Massachusetts is no stranger to strange tales, but the Dover Demon is in a class of its own. This pint-sized, alien-like creature was spotted over just 2 nights in 1977, yet its brief appearance left an indelible mark on local legend. Imagine this, a small, pale humanoid figure with an oversized head, glowing orange eyes, and spindly limbs scuttling across the dark backroads of Dover. No fur, no scales, just strangely smooth skin. Sounds like something that escaped from Area 51, right? For those unfamiliar, Area 51 is a top-secret military base in Nevada, USA. Known for its high security measures and classified operations, it's become legendary in pop culture as the alleged hub for UFO research and alien-related conspiracies. While officially it's used for testing experimental aircraft, the base's secrecy has fueled wild theories about extraterrestrial life, making it a favorite in discussions about the unexplained. 3 separate witnesses, all teenagers, reported seeing the creature in different locations, and their descriptions were strangely consistent. They claimed it moved in an unsettling, almost insect-like manner, gripping rocks and trees with its long fingers. While skeptics dismissed it as a misidentified animal, perhaps a baby moose or a large owl, locals weren't convinced. A creature this strange doesn't just pop up out of nowhere and leave people scratching their heads for decades. Fun fact: The Dover demon was never seen again after those 2 nights, making it one of the most mysterious and short-lived mythical sightings in history. Talk about a mic drop moment. Theories about the Dover demon range from extraterrestrial visitation to interdimensional slip-ups. Whatever the truth, it's become a favorite topic for cryptid enthusiasts and a reminder that sometimes the strangest creatures don't need extended screen time to make an impression. Number 27. Ogopogo, Canada's Nessie. If Scotland has Nessie, Canada has Ogopogo, a lake monster that's been captivating imaginations in British Columbia for centuries. Said to inhabit Okanagan Lake, Ogopogo is often described as a long, serpentine creature with smooth, dark skin. Some sightings suggest it could be as long as 50 feet, while others liken it to a prehistoric aquatic dinosaur. Basically, it's Canada's way of saying, hey, we can do lake monsters too. The origins of Ogopogo go back to indigenous folklore, where it was known as Nha-a-ik, a water spirit that demanded respect and offerings for safe passage across the lake. Early European settlers, of course, turned the water spirit into a full-blown mythical being, because why not? Sightings began to roll in, with people claiming to see humps breaking the water's surface or something large moving beneath the waves. Despite modern searches using sonar and underwater cameras, definitive proof of Ogopogo remains elusive. But that hasn't stopped the legend from growing. Tourism thrives on the mystery, with statues, souvenirs, and even Ogopogo-themed boat tours celebrating this slippery celebrity. Fun fact, in 1926, a group of people claimed to have seen Ogopogo attack and drown 3 horses. Whether true or exaggerated, it certainly adds to the creature's fearsome reputation. Whether Ogopogo is a genuine prehistoric survivor, a trick of the waves, or just Canada's answer to Nessie, one thing's certain. It's a story that refuses to sink. 28. Black Shuck, England's ghostly guardian. If you're wandering the misty terrains of East Anglia at night and see a shadowy black dog with glowing red or green eyes, congratulations, you've met Black Shuck. This legendary ghostly hound has been haunting the English countryside for centuries, often associated with death omens and the supernatural. But don't let its cuddly canine shape fool you. Black Shuck isn't the type to roll over for belly rubs. The legend of Black Shuck dates back to medieval times, with one of the most famous tales coming from 1577. On a stormy night in Suffolk, the beast was said to have burst into a church, killing 2 parishioners before vanishing, leaving scorch marks on the door. Local stories suggests seeing Black Shuck means you'll meet an untimely end, though some tales portray the creature as more of a guardian than a harbinger of doom. Interestingly, historical sightings of Black Shuck may have been inspired by actual oversized black dogs that roamed the countryside, or perhaps by wolves, which were once native to the region. Over time, the story took on supernatural elements, transforming a potentially real animal into a spectral icon. Fun fact, in 2014, archaeologists discovered a large dog skeleton near Leiston Abbey in Suffolk, leading some to wonder if they'd uncovered the remains of Black Shuck. Spoiler alert, it was probably just a very big dog. Today, Black Shuck lives on in local legends, literature, and even heavy metal music. Whether it's a death omen or a misunderstood protector, one thing's for sure, this is one dog you wouldn't want to fetch. 29. Mongolian Deathworm. Terror of the Gobi Desert. So, you're in the arid expanse of the Gobi Desert, and suddenly the sand shifts. What emerges isn't a snake, lizard, or anything remotely familiar. It's a creature locals describe as a massive worm, bright red and deadly. Known as the Algoi Korkoi, which translates to intestine worm because of its color and shape, this cryptid is said to be as long as a man's arm and capable of spitting acid or delivering an electric shock strong enough to kill a human or livestock. The legend of the Mongolian deathworm is deeply rooted in Mongolian folklore, with stories passed down through generations of nomadic herders. While Western explorers have sought proof of its existence, locals maintain a wary respect for the creature. The worm supposedly thrives in the most remote parts of the Gobi, emerging only during the hottest months. Fun fact, some researchers speculate that the stories might stem from sightings of actual, albeit non-lethal, desert creatures, but that hasn't stopped the deathworm from becoming a symbol of the desert's mysterious dangers. 30. Wendigo. The spirit of hunger and greed. Traveling from the scorching sands of Mongolia to the frigid forests of North America, we meet the Wendigo, a creature as terrifying as its wintry homeland. In Algonquin folklore, the Wendigo isn't just a monster, it's a warning. This emaciated, hideous being is said to embody greed, hunger, and the consequences of human desperation. The Wendigo's origins lie in tales told by indigenous peoples of the northern United States and Canada, where harsh winters could push people to the brink of starvation. The Wendigo was said to be a person who, in their desperation, resorted to cannibalism. As punishment, they were transformed into this horrific, gaunt creature, always hungry, but never satisfied. Its haunting cry is said to echo through the forests, striking fear into the hearts of those who hear it. Interestingly, the Wendigo is more than a campfire story. It became so ingrained in cultural consciousness that Wendigo psychosis was once considered a real psychological condition, a state where individuals believed they were possessed by a Wendigo spirit, driving them to cannibalistic tendencies. Fun fact, the Wendigo's modern interpretations have made it a pop culture icon, appearing in TV shows like Supernatural and games like Until Dawn, but its historical roots remain as a stark reminder of human survival at its darkest. 31. La Llorona, the Weeping Woman. Finally, we journey to Mexico, where La Llorona, the Weeping Woman, haunts riversides and canals, searching for her lost children. The story is as tragic as it is terrifying. According to legend, La Llorona was a beautiful woman who, in a fit of jealousy or madness, drowned her own children in a river. Overcome with grief, she now wanders endlessly, wailing in sorrow and seeking to find them. Her ghostly cries, "Ay, mis hijos, oh my children," are said to send shivers down the spines of those who hear them. Parents often use her story as a cautionary tale to keep children away from rivers and dangerous waters. But for adults, La Llorona represents something deeper: guilt, regret, and the consequences of choices that can't be undone. Fun fact, the legend of La Llorona has transcended borders, appearing in movies, songs, and even as a folklore-inspired warning across Latin America. Despite being centuries old, her sorrowful tale continues to resonate, a haunting reminder that some griefs can never be silenced. 32. Banshee, the wailing messenger of doom. In Irish folklore, the banshee isn't just a ghost. It's an omen, and not the kind you want to encounter. Known for her strange wails that pierce through the silence of the countryside, the banshee is said to foretell the death of someone in certain ancient Irish families. But let's clear something up. She's not there to harm you. She's more like the otherworldly version of a tragic news anchor. The descriptions of the banshee vary depending on the source. In some tales, she's a radiant young woman with flowing silver hair, draped in a cloak that seems to shining in the moonlight. In others, she's a terrifying old crone with sunken cheeks and blood-red eyes from crying for centuries. Either way, her presence is never comforting. Her mournful keening, a sound said to be both heartbreaking and spine-breaking, could be heard resounding through Ireland's misty hills, usually at night. Historically, the banshee was tied to noble families, particularly those with O or Mac in their surnames, like O'Connor or McCarthy. Her role wasn't to scare, but to mourn. Think of her as the ultimate Irish lamenter, ensuring that no passing went unnoticed, even if her timing was, frankly, terrifying. Fun fact, not all banshee encounters were horrifying. Some families believed she was a protective figure, mourning alongside them. So if you ever hear a strange wail in the distance, it might be your ghostly family PR team, reminding you of your Irish roots, whether you like it or not. 33. White Lady, the universal ghost of tragedy. You might think of the White Lady as the ghost world's most traveled figure. She's like the franchise star of spectral folklore, appearing in legends across Europe, Asia, and the Americas. The White Lady typically represents sorrow, betrayal, or unfulfilled love. Her wardrobe, always the same, an ethereal white dress, flowing dramatically as she haunts old castles, forests, rivers, and occasionally, modern urban legends. The stories of the White Lady often begin with heartbreak. In Europe, she's linked to aristocratic families, wandering ancestral estates after being wronged by a lover or betrayed in life. In some versions, she's a scorned bride, forever searching for her lost groom. Across the Atlantic, her tales take on darker twists. Some versions describe her as a grieving mother, searching for her children, while others depict her as a vengeful spirit out to punish the guilty. The White Lady's global appeal is likely tied to her themes of love, betrayal, and grief, which are universal. Wherever you find her, she's an emotional wreck, but one that has captivated humanity's imagination for centuries. Fun fact, the White Lady is more than just a ghost. She's a pop culture icon. From ghost tours to horror films, she's managed to turn her tragic backstory into a global brand. Who knew eternal heartbreak could be so marketable? 34. Rusalka, the enigmatic water spirit. From the lakes and rivers of Eastern Europe emerges the Rusalka, a creature as haunting as the waters she inhabits. The Rusalka is often depicted as the spirit of a young woman who met a tragic end, usually through drowning, often caused by betrayal. Bound to the water where her life ended, she becomes both a guardian of her watery grave and a vengeful figure. The Rusalka isn't your average ghost. Her beauty is legendary: long, flowing hair, luminous skin, and a voice said to be both enchanting and deadly. But beneath her charm lies a darker side. The Rusalka lures unsuspecting men into the water, where they meet a watery end. Think of her as the original femme fatale, but with algae in her hair. The stories of the Rusalka vary depending on the region. In some tales, she's a tragic figure, forever mourning her lost life. In others, she's more malevolent, taking revenge on the world that wronged her. What makes her particularly fascinating is her duality. She's both a symbol of nature's beauty and its untamed, dangerous power. Fun fact, not all Rusalki are malevolent. In some legends, their haunting can be put to rest if the cause of their death is avenged or if they're given a proper burial. Until then, they remain tied to their watery domain, a reminder of the consequences of betrayal. 35. Poltergeist, the mischief-making spirit. When most people think of ghosts, they picture spooky figures floating around with their chains rattling. But a poltergeist? That's a whole different game. The term, meaning noisy ghost in German, describes an entity that doesn't just haunt, you'd swear it's auditioning for a paranormal talent show. Poltergeists are notorious for causing chaos, slamming doors, throwing objects, making creepy noises, and occasionally pushing someone's patience or sanity to the limit. Think of it as the troublesome sibling of the ghost world. Historically, poltergeist activity has been recorded worldwide, but it's not all doom and gloom. Or is it? These spirits often center their antics around homes or specific people, with adolescents being common targets. Why? Some paranormal enthusiasts theorize it's the heightened emotions and hormonal chaos of teenagers that attract these entities. In other words, your angsty teen might not just be slamming doors, they might have an otherworldly accomplice. Famous cases like the Enfield poltergeist in 1970s England have fascinated and terrified audiences. This infamous haunting involved flying furniture, mysterious voices, and a family swearing they were living in a horror movie. Of course, skeptics argue it was all fabricated, but the story stuck, inspiring countless movies and documentaries. Fun fact, a poltergeist's mischief sometimes borders on the absurd. There are reports of milk bottles unscrewing themselves or shoes being hurled across rooms. If anything, they're like the original pranksters, just with a paranormal edge. 36. Draugr, the undead guardians of Norse mythology. Forget your average zombie. The Draugr of Norse mythology is undead with an attitude. These warriors don't stumble around aimlessly moaning for brains. No, they stay firmly in their graves, guarding treasures with a vengeance. And if someone's foolish enough to disturb their rest, well, let's just say they don't politely ask you to leave. The Draugr was said to be fearsome, with the ability to shapeshift, control the weather, and even grow to gigantic proportions. Imagine digging up a chest of gold, only to find a towering undead Viking glaring down at you. Some legends suggest these beings could also crush their enemies under their sheer weight. To make matters worse, their bite was rumored to spread death and disease. These undead protectors weren't random villagers brought back to life. They were usually greedy or malevolent individuals who refused to let go of their earthly possessions. A Draugr was as much a warning as it was a tale of horror. Mess with what's not yours, and you'll face something worse than death. Fun fact, Draugr could shapeshift into animals, often a horse or bull, to terrify their would-be robbers. Talk about overachievers. You've got to respect their dedication to the stay-off-my-lawn vibe. 37. Lady in Red, the phantom of tragic romances. While the Lady in White haunts forests and castles, her glamorous cousin, the Lady in Red, prefers more upscale venues like hotels and theaters. This spectral figure is usually tied to stories of love, betrayal, and heartbreak, with her appearances adding a touch of eerie elegance to any haunting. The Lady in Red is often associated with tragic backstories involving forbidden romances, jealousy, or untimely deaths. Picture a 1920s starlet betrayed by her lover or a heartbroken bride taking her last steps in her wedding gown. Her presence is often marked by an overwhelming sense of sorrow, but she doesn't just wallow in her misery. Oh no, she's known to glide gracefully through hallways, leaving behind an air of mystery, and sometimes the faint scent of roses. One of the most famous tales involves the Fairmont Hotel in Banff, Canada, where a lady in red is said to haunt the premises. Guests have reported seeing her descending the grand staircase or disappearing into thin air. While she's generally harmless, her tragic backstory gives her an emotional depth that makes her more than just another ghostly figure. Fun fact: the Lady in Red's allure has made her a favorite for ghost tours and legends, but she's also a reminder of how many myths intertwine with real historical events. Her story isn't just about haunting, it's about love lost and the imprint it leaves behind. 38. Bloody Mary, the Queen of the Mirror Realm. This is one of the most infamous slumber party dares of all time. Bloody Mary, half legend, half psychological experiment, and all nightmare fuel. The story goes that if you stand in front of a mirror in a dimly lit room, chant her name 3 times, or 13 depending on how brave or foolish you are, she'll appear. But what happens next is where the tales diverge. Some say she scratches your face, others say she drags you into the mirror. Either way, it's not the kind of encounter you can casually shake off. Where does this legend come from? Some link it to Queen Mary Was of England, dubbed Bloody Mary for her relentless persecution of Protestants. Others argue it has roots in folklore warning against vanity, tying it to women who supposedly spent too much time in front of mirrors. Either way, it taps into our primal fear of the unknown and our own reflection. Fun fact: the Bloody Mary ritual gained its modern fame in the 1970s, often used to freak out younger siblings and gullible friends. Psychologists believe the dim lighting and repetitive chanting can trigger mild hallucinations, turning a dare into a self-fulfilling prophecy. But hey, if you're feeling bold, grab a flashlight and give it a go. Just don't blame us if things get spooky. 39. The Headless Horseman, Ghost on the Gallop. From the misty woods of Europe to the haunted trails of Sleepy Hollow, the Headless Horseman gallops through the annals of folklore with a vengeance. This decapitated spirit isn't just out for a casual ride, he's usually looking for his missing head, or seeking revenge for its loss. While the tale is often associated with Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, it has older roots in European folklore. In Irish legends, there's the Dullahan, a headless rider carrying its skull like a lantern. In Germany, tales of headless hunters often served as cautionary tales to keep people out of the woods after dark. In Irving's version, the horseman is a Hessian soldier who lost his head, literally, during the Revolutionary War. His ghost is said to haunt Sleepy Hollow, terrifying unsuspecting travelers. Fun fact: the story became so iconic that it inspired countless adaptations, from cartoons to horror films, solidifying the Headless Horseman as a pop culture legend. But here's the real kicker. How does he see where he's going? Whether he's carrying his head under his arm or relying on supernatural GPS, the Headless Horseman remains one of the most bizarre and enduring figures in folklore. Onryo, Japan's spirit of vengeance. If ghosts with grudges were an Olympic event, the Onryo would take gold every time. In Japanese folklore, the Onryo is a vengeful spirit fueled by intense anger or sorrow. Often, they're women wronged in life, betrayed lovers, victims of injustice, who return to haunt those responsible. What makes the Onryo truly terrifying isn't just their thirst for revenge. These spirits are believed to have the power to cause real-world disasters. Think earthquakes, fires, or even plagues. Not content with personal vendettas, the Onryo can go full apocalyptic. One of the most famous Onryo legends is that of Oiwa, a woman poisoned by her unfaithful husband. After her death, her disfigured spirit began haunting him relentlessly, driving him to madness. Her tale has inspired countless Japanese ghost stories and films, including the iconic The Ring. Fun fact, the onryo has a look that's instantly recognizable in Japanese horror. Long black hair, pale skin, and a slow, deliberate crawl that'll send shivers down anyone's spine. But beneath the horror lies a deeper message about justice, grief, and the consequences of betrayal. So, next time you hear a creak in an empty house, maybe double-check your karma. You wouldn't want an onryo knocking at your door. 41. Strigoi, the OG vampires of Romania. Long before vampires started wearing tuxedos and seducing people in candlelit castles, there were the Strigoi, the real MVPs of Romanian nightmares. These undead troublemakers were the original vampires, and they didn't need a fancy accent to scare the living daylights out of you. Nope, these guys were messy, chaotic, and unpredictable. The Strigoi didn't do the whole polite sip of blood thing. They went full-on buffet mode, usually targeting people they knew in life. Creepy, right? Legend has it they were restless spirits who couldn't stay dead. The reasons? Take your pick. Sinful life, dying young, or in some cases, just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. To keep a Strigoi in its grave, villagers would get creative, staking it, burying it upside down, or even weighing it down with heavy stones. You know, just your average Tuesday night precautions. Fun fact, these ghouls could shapeshift into animals, think wolves, owls, or cats, and some stories even claim they could turn into mist. Sound familiar? That's because the Strigoi were the blueprint for every vampire story you've ever heard, including Bram Stoker's Dracula. So if you're into vampires, you've got Romania to thank, or blame. 42. Aswang, the shape-shifting nightmare. If you think a shape-shifting, baby-hunting monster sounds like something out of a horror movie, you're not wrong. Meet the Aswang, the Philippines' most terrifying export. By day, it's just a regular person blending in like the friendly neighbor you'd borrow sugar from. But by night, total nightmare fuel. The Aswang transforms into a creature that looks like it walked straight out of your worst dreams. Bat-like wings, a super long, creepy tongue, and a penchant for stalking pregnant women. It doesn't just scare its victims, it drains their life essence through its tube-like tongue. Yeah, it's as horrifying as it sounds. The legend of the Aswang has been around for centuries and serves as both a warning and a cultural touchstone in Filipino folklore. Kids were told to avoid wandering off alone, and suspicious neighbors were often accused of harboring Aswang tendencies. Talk about awkward dinner parties. Fun fact, want to know if someone's an Aswang? Look into their eyes. If your reflection is upside down, congratulations, you've just made eye contact with a monster. Now might be a good time to politely excuse yourself, permanently. 43. Jiangshi, China's hopping menace. If the Jiangshi had a motto, it'd be, I'll scare you, but I'll make it funny. This Chinese folklore creature, also known as the hopping vampire, isn't just a walking corpse, it's a hopping one. Thanks to rigor mortis, it can't bend its knees, so it bounces around with its arms outstretched, looking like it's auditioning for a zombie comedy. The Jiangshi isn't interested in blood like its European cousins. Instead, it feeds on qi, the life energy of its victims. And while its movements might seem a bit comical, its intent is anything but. With greenish skin and traditional Qing dynasty robes, the Jiangshi brings an unsettling mix of historical fashion and paranormal terror. The legend likely started from practical fears. Back in the day, transporting bodies long distances for burial was tricky. To explain why bodies might move, think shifting during decomposition or being carried home, stories of hopping corpses began to circulate. Fun fact, the Jiangshi has one weird weakness: rice. Yep, apparently tossing a handful of rice can confuse it because it has to stop and count every grain. Who knew vampires had OCD? Pro tip, keep a bag of rice handy if you're ever in 18th century China. Unlike most cryptids, the Jiangshi balances fear and comedy perfectly, making it one of folklore's most entertainingly terrifying creatures. Just don't laugh too hard, it might hop toward you next. 44. Manananggal, the night-stalking splitter. If you thought the Aswang was scary, wait until you meet its cousin, the Manananggal. This Filipino legend takes body horror to a whole new level. By day, she's an ordinary woman, but by night, she literally detaches her upper body and grows massive bat-like wings to hunt for prey. That's right, her torso flies off, leaving her legs behind like a bad roommate who won't clean up. The Manananggal's favorite delicacy? Pregnant women and their unborn babies. She uses her long, needle-like tongue to suck the life out of her victims while they sleep. If you think this sounds like a setup for a horror movie, you're not wrong. But the people of the Philippines don't just sit back and hope for the best. Garlic, salt, and ash are all considered effective weapons against her. Bind her lower half, sprinkle salt on it, and she's done for. Talk about an Achilles heel. Literally. Fun fact: the word manananggal comes from the Tagalog word tanggal, meaning to remove. So basically, her name is a walking spoiler alert. 45. Penanggalan, the flying head from Malaysia. If you thought the manananggal was bad, meet her equally unsettling Malaysian counterpart, the penanggalan. This creature doesn't just detach its upper body, it's just a head, complete with trailing organs, floating around in search of blood. Yep, it's as horrifying as it sounds. The penanggalan is said to prey on pregnant women and newborns, sneaking into homes and feeding on them while they sleep. Legends say the creature becomes a penanggalan by choice, often as part of a dark ritual to gain power or beauty. By day, she's an ordinary woman, blending into society, but when night falls, she soaks her entrails in vinegar to shrink them back down and reinserts herself into her body. That's some nightmare-inducing multitasking. Fun fact: like the manananggal, the penanggalan has a weakness. Thorny plants like pandanus leaves are often hung around homes to snare her trailing organs. Imagine getting taken out by shrubbery. Embarrassing for a supernatural being, really. 46. Adze, the vampiric firefly of folklore. Now let's take a detour to West Africa, where the Adze proves that even fireflies can't be trusted. This vampiric creature from folklore disguises itself as a harmless insect, slipping into homes to suck the blood of its victims. Unlike the manananggal or penanggalan, it doesn't go for dramatic entrances. The Adze thrives on stealth. What makes the Adze so terrifying isn't just its blood-sucking tendencies. It's also a carrier of disease and misfortune. Some believe it targets children specifically, draining their vitality or spreading illness. If caught in its insect form, the Adze can transform into a human-like figure to fight its way out. Fun fact: the only way to stop an Adze permanently is to capture it and destroy its human form. But good luck catching something that can slip through a crack in your window. It's the mosquito's much scarier cousin. While the Adze might not have the flair of a flying torso or a floating head, its ability to blend in and strike unnoticed makes it just as disaster. It's a reminder that sometimes the smallest things are the deadliest. 47. Lamia, the cursed queen turned child eater. Greek mythology can be a roller coaster, and Lamia's story is no exception. Once a stunningly beautiful queen of Libya, Lamia had the misfortune of catching Zeus's wandering eye. If you know anything about Zeus, you know this was never going to end well. Hera, his notoriously vengeful wife, didn't blame Zeus. Oh no, that would be too logical. Instead, she cursed Lamia, taking or killing her children and leaving her spiraling into grief and madness. As if that wasn't enough, Hera threw in a bonus curse for good measure. Lamia could never close her eyes, forcing her to relive her heartbreak 24/7. Talk about overkill. In some versions, Zeus tried to help by giving her the ability to remove her eyes, which honestly raises more questions than it answers. Eventually, Lamia's sorrow twisted her into a monstrous figure with a serpentine body, wandering the night to prey on children, a tragic echo of her own loss. Over time, she became the ultimate cautionary tale, a creature that could make bedtime stories an actual nightmare. Fun fact: some say Lamia's legend might have influenced later vampire myths. A beautiful but cursed figure wandering the night? It's all there. And who needs sleep when you're busy haunting people anyway? 48. Vatala, the spirit of corpses. Think regular ghosts are spooky? Meet the Vatala, an Indian mythological spirit that takes haunting to a whole new level. These guys don't just float around scaring people, they possess corpses and use them like puppets. Yes, you read that right. The Vatala is the original corpse influencer. Lurking around graveyards or sacred spaces, Vatalas are more than just creepy. They're often incredibly wise, capable of solving riddles, and sometimes even helpful, when they're not, inhabiting dead bodies. In one famous tale, King Vikramaditya must carry a corpse possessed by a Vatala while answering its riddles. Every riddle is a trap, and if he answers incorrectly, it's game over. It's basically a mythological version of Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? But with a much higher stakes finale. Fun fact, unlike most spirits, Vitalas don't bother with reincarnation. They're above all that. This makes them unpredictable, powerful, and, let's be honest, a little arrogant. They've got an eternal past to wander the mortal world, which means they're in no rush to move on. 49. Volkodlak, the wolf-like vampire. Before werewolves started howling at full moons in Hollywood, there was the Volkodlak, a Slavic legend that's one part wolf, one part vampire, and 100% terrifying. This creature was believed to rise from the grave to hunt both humans and livestock. Basically, if you had a Volkodlak in your village, you were having a bad day. Unlike today's werewolves, the Volkodlak wasn't a part-time wolf. It had all the predatory instincts of a vampire with the ferocity of a wolf, creating the ultimate nightmare blend. In some stories, it could shapeshift into other animals, making it nearly impossible to escape. Oh, and it didn't just drain your blood. It also had a taste for causing chaos wherever it went. Fun fact, the word Volkodlak means wolf skin in some Slavic languages, which makes sense given its hairy reputation. Historians believe it helped inspire the werewolf myths we're familiar with today, blending vampiric elements with a lupine twist. Whether they're lurking in graveyards, forests, or the shadows of your imagination, these creatures prove one thing: humanity's love for a good, spooky tale never goes out of style. 50. Werehina, the shape-shifting trickster of Africa. Let's talk about the werehina, a creature that could give werewolves a run for their money. Originating from African folklore, this shapeshifter is all about deception. By day, it might be your friendly neighbor, or that guy at the market selling suspiciously fresh goat meat. But by night, boom, it's a cunning predator with a taste for mischief, and maybe more than mischief. What sets the werehina apart from your run-of-the-mill werewolf is its brains. This isn't just a creature that relies on brute strength. Folklore paints it as calculating and clever, outsmarting anyone trying to hunt it down. You lose a few livestock, and suddenly everyone's side-eyeing the werehina rumors. And there's a supernatural twist. These creatures are often tied to witchcraft. Some believe witches transform into hyenas to carry out their nefarious plans. You could be sipping tea with a werehina during the day and not even know it until your chickens vanish overnight. Fun fact, hyenas themselves are viewed with suspicion in certain African cultures, seen as symbols of greed and trickery. So naturally, turning them into shapeshifters with a side of horror makes perfect sense. Oh, and apparently, werehyenas are stronger, faster, and way sneakier than werewolves. So, good luck outrunning one. 51. Rakshasa, India's demon tricksters. Next up, the Rakshasa. These aren't your average under-the-bed monsters. In Indian mythology, Rakshasas are demon-like beings with a flair for drama and deception. They're shapeshifters, which means you might think you're chatting with a friendly stranger until you notice their teeth are a little too sharp. The Rakshasas don't just scare people, they mess with them. These demons love chaos, and they've been featured in epic stories like the Ramayana and Mahabharata. Their favorite hobbies? Shape-shifting, causing confusion, and sometimes eating people. Talk about multitasking. One standout Rakshasa is Ravana, the 10-headed king from the Ramayana. Sure, he kidnapped Sita and waged war with Rama, but he also read a lot of books, played musical instruments, and ruled his kingdom like a boss. See? Complex characters existed way before modern TV dramas. Fun fact, some Rakshasas were so good at shapeshifting that they could mimic the voices and appearances of loved ones. Imagine trying to figure out if your best friend is actually your best friend or a demon in disguise. Trust issues? Guaranteed. 52. Nukkalavi, Scotland's worst nightmare. If you thought the werehina or Rakshasa were bad, meet the Nukkalavi. This is the stuff of nightmares, and not the kind you can wake up from. Picture a giant, skinless horse with exposed muscles and veins topped off with a grotesque human torso fused to its back. Sounds awful, right? Oh, it gets worse. The Nukkalavi is a demon straight out of Scottish folklore said to haunt the Orkney Islands. It brings disease, drought, and destruction wherever it goes. Locals claim it hates fresh water, which is probably why they haven't all packed up and left the islands. Rivers and streams act as the only barriers against this monstrosity. And let's talk about that look. A creature with no skin, muscles on full display, and a face that screams, I'm here to ruin your day. It's the kind of thing you'd expect in a horror movie, except it's been terrifying people for centuries. Fun fact? Some believe the Nuckelavee was created as a way to explain natural disasters and diseases. Crops failed? Must be the Nuckelavee. Livestock died mysteriously? Blame the Nuckelavee. It's like the ultimate scapegoat, but, scarier. The lesson here? Respect nature. Don't go wandering around alone at night, and maybe think twice before vacationing in the Orkneys. Because if you run into the Nuckelavee, your hiking boots won't save you. 53. Leannan Scythe, the artistic vampire. Let's go into the world of Celtic mythology, where we meet the Leannan Seed, a creature that would make every tortured artist scream, "Why is this my life?" The Leannan Scythe isn't your typical blood-sucking vampire. No, she's far more glamorous and tragic. Often described as a stunning woman, she doesn't just sip blood, she inspires creativity while slowly draining her victim's life force. A win-win, if you don't mind the whole dying young part. Here's how it works. She finds an artist, poet, or musician, becomes their muse, and fills their head with unparalleled creative genius. Suddenly, they're writing hit songs, painting masterpieces, or composing symphonies. But here's the twist. The more successful they become, the weaker they get. Inspiration comes at a deadly cost. Fun fact? The Leannan Scythe was often blamed for the tragically short lives of many artists. Got a poet who died mysteriously after a string of brilliant works? Must have been the Leannan Scythe. It's like a mythological version of too good to be true. And yet, the Leannan Scythe isn't just a heartless life drainer. Some interpretations suggest she genuinely cares for her chosen artists, which somehow makes her story even sadder. She's not out to kill, she just doesn't know how to turn her muse game down. So, the next time you feel unusually creative, maybe check your energy levels. You never know who's pulling the strings. 54. Chon-Chon, the Whispering Head. Now let's hop over to Chile for one of the strangest creatures in folklore, the Chon-Chon. This isn't your average bird or vampire. The Chon-Chon is literally the severed head of a sorcerer, complete with wings made of its own ears. Yes, ears. If that doesn't scream, "You're not ready for this," I don't know what does. The Chon-Chon is said to come alive after dark, taking to the skies to whisper bad omens into the ears of unsuspecting victims. Its favorite haunts? Quiet, dark nights where its strange whispers scares you like crazy. And before you ask, no, you can't just swat it away like a regular bird. This thing is supernatural. What makes the Chon-Chon so terrifying is the element of surprise. Imagine hearing a faint whisper in the dead of night, only to realize it's coming from a floating head with wings. Locals believe the Chon-Chon could spread illness and bad luck, making it a creature to avoid at all costs. Fun fact? The Chon-Chon was sometimes linked to sorcerers who used dark magic. If you saw one flying around, it might mean that a nearby witch was up to no good. So if you're in Chile and hear a soft whisper at night, maybe double-check the skies, or just stay indoors altogether. 55. Yaramayahu, Australia's hungry red goblin. Australia doesn't just have terrifying wildlife, its folklore delivers nightmare fuel too. Meet the Yaramayahu, a vampire-like creature with a twist. Unlike your classic vampire, this little red goblin doesn't bother with fangs or blood-sucking. No, it swallows its prey whole, because why waste time when you can just gulp? The Yaramayahu is said to live in fig trees, waiting for unsuspecting travelers to pass beneath. Once you're within range, it leaps down, grabs you, and swallows you whole. But here's where it gets even weirder. After eating you, it takes a little nap, spits you out, and then, wait for it, eats you again. Each time this happens, you get a little shorter and redder, until, eventually, you become one of them. Fun fact? The Yaramayahu doesn't attack at night like most creepy creatures. It strikes during the day, proving that even sunlight isn't safe in Australian folklore. It's almost like Australia looked at regular vampires and said, "Let's make it scarier," and throw in a tree for good measure. Despite its terrifying habits, some believe the Yaramayahu was a cautionary tale for kids. Moral of the story? Don't wander near fig trees, and definitely don't nap under one. Because if this red goblin spots you, it's game over, and not in a fun way. 56. Kelpie, Scotland's most charming death trap. Let's talk about the Kelpie, a creature that's a little too good at multitasking. Part water spirit, part professional serial trickster. The Kelpie hails from Scottish folklore. Its favorite gig? Luring unsuspecting victims into rivers and lakes, only to drag them to a watery grave. Charming, right? Here's how it works. The Kelpie usually takes the form of a beautiful horse. And not just any horse. A horse so majestic, it might as well be auditioning for a fantasy movie. Travelers passing by can't resist its allure. But here's the catch. Once you climb on its back, you're stuck. The Kelpie's skin becomes adhesive, and before you know it, you're galloping straight into the depths, screaming, "Why did I trust the suspiciously shiny horse?" Now you might think, why not just avoid mysterious horses near bodies of water? Good plan, except the Kelpie can also transform into a human. Imagine being in a quaint Scottish village and chatting with a stranger at the pub only to realize they're a murderous water spirit. Talk about trust issues. Fun fact, some tales suggest you can tame a Kelpie if you manage to grab its bridle, making it work for you. But let's be real, are you going to risk wrestling a magical death horse? Didn't think so. 57. Ningen, the Antarctic mystery. Next up, the Ningen, a creature so elusive it might as well be auditioning for a cryptid reality show. This Japanese urban legend describes a massive humanoid aquatic creature that roams the icy waters near Antarctica. Picture something between a beluga whale and an alien, and you're getting close. Sailors who've allegedly spotted the Ningen report seeing a pale, ghostly figure with a humanoid shape, complete with arms, legs, and sometimes even fingers. Because nothing says nightmare fuel like a creature casually waving at you from the depths of the ocean. The legend of the Ningen gained traction in the early 2000s, thanks to online forums and blurry photos that make Bigfoot sightings look like high-definition masterpieces. People speculate it could be a misidentified whale, a government experiment, because conspiracy theories are mandatory, or something entirely unknown. Fun fact, the name Ningen literally means human in Japanese, which only adds to its eerie reputation. Is it a mutated sea creature, a species we've yet to discover, or just another reminder that the ocean is terrifying? Either way, the Ningen has firmly secured its spot in the Cryptid Hall of Fame. 58. Makara, the divine mount with style. Let's take a look into Indian mythology, where the Makara reigns as one of the most versatile and stylish sea creatures. Part fish, part terrestrial animal, the Makara is a glorious mashup that could rival any modern-day hybrid. Think of it as the ancient version of, why choose one animal when you can have both? The Makara isn't just a random mythical beast. It often serves as the mount, or vahana, for river goddesses like Ganga and sea deities like Varuna. Essentially, it's the VIP chauffeur of the divine world. With its half-aquatic, half-terrestrial design, it's perfectly equipped to navigate both land and water. And if you're wondering what it looks like, well, that depends. Some depictions show it with a crocodile's head and a fish's body, while others give it an elephant's trunk. One thing's for sure, it's always extra. Fun fact, the Makara is often used as a symbol of protection in Indian art and architecture. You'll find it adorning temple gates and water spouts, warding off evil spirits with its majestic hybrid charm. It's like the ancient equivalent of a really good security system, impressive and functional. So the next time you're admiring intricate carvings in an Indian temple, take a closer look. That Makara might not be as famous as the Kelpie or Ningen, but it's got style, history, and divine connections to spare. 59. Amabi, the epidemic whisperer. Let's talk about the Amabi, a mermaid-like creature from Japanese folklore with a very niche job, predicting epidemics. Yes, you read that right. While other mythical beings are out there causing chaos, the Amabi is busy issuing public health warnings. Legend has it that in the 19th century, a glowing creature with a fish-like body, 3 legs, and long hair appeared off the coast of Japan. It introduced itself as the Amabi and announced, "If a disease ever spreads, draw my image and show it to the people. It will protect them." Then, like a mythical mic drop, it disappeared back into the sea. And here's the fun part. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the Amabi made a major comeback. People in Japan started sharing its image all over social media, hoping to channel some folkloric protection. Talk about staying relevant through the centuries. Fun fact, the Amabi isn't the only creature in Japanese mythology with a predictive streak, but it's definitely the most pandemic-focused. Makes you wonder, If the Amabi were around today, would it have its own YouTube channel for health updates? 60. Umibozu, the ocean's barrel bandit. Next up, the Umibozu, a giant sea spirit from Japanese folklore that's equal parts terrifying and oddly specific. Picture this. You're a sailor on a quiet night, gliding across the ocean, when suddenly a massive shadowy figure rises from the waves. It's the Umibozu, and it's here to ruin your day. This towering spirit, often described as having a featureless, black body and glowing eyes, is infamous for sinking ships. But here's the twist. Before it unleashes its wrath, it demands barrels from the crew. Why barrels? Who knows? Maybe it's stocking up for a mythical shipwreck party. Here's how it usually goes. The sailors, panicked and desperate, toss barrels into the sea to appease the Umibozu. But surprise, it still sinks the ship anyway. Talk about a sore loser. Fun fact? Some say that Umibozu might be a misunderstood creature, born from sailors' fear of storms or massive sea creatures like whales. Others think it's just plain mean. Either way, it's a solid reminder that the ocean is not your friend. 61. Selkie, the seal with a secret air. And now, let's visit the Scottish folklore and talk about Selkie, a shape-shifting seal that can transform into a human by shedding its skin. Think of it as a part-time human, full-time sea dweller. Selkies are often depicted as incredibly beautiful in their human form, which is probably why they have a knack for accidentally starting romantic dramas. The classic Selkie tale goes like this. A human finds a Selkie's discarded seal skin, hides it, and convinces the now human Selkie to marry them. But here's the catch. Without their skin, the Selkie can't return to the sea. Years later, the Selkie inevitably finds their hidden skin. Humans are bad at hiding things, and immediately bolts back to the ocean, leaving behind their heartbroken spouse. It's the ultimate, I'm going out for milk and never coming back move, except with seals. Fun fact? Some people believe the Selkie legend was inspired by real-life sightings of seals or even shipwreck survivors. Either way, it's a story with a strong message. Don't mess with someone's belongings, especially if it's their magical seal skin. Whether it's the Ambi keeping us healthy, the Umibozu terrorizing sailors, or the Selkie stealing hearts and making dramatic exits, these creatures remind us that folklore isn't just about scares. It's about the traits and mysteries that make us human, or in this case, part seal. 62. Sea Bishop, the clergyman of the deep. The sea bishop sounds like something straight out of a Monty Python sketch, but medieval folklore treated it as a serious omen. This fish-like creature allegedly resembled a bishop, complete with a mitre-shaped head and an air of unearned authority. Reports of its sightings in the 16th century described it as half human, half fish, and definitely not the kind of bishop you'd want officiating a wedding. Seafarers believed that encountering a sea bishop was bad news, a harbinger of storms, shipwrecks, or general nautical chaos. Think of it as a soggy version of red sky at morning. Some speculate that early sightings could have been exaggerated descriptions of large marine animals, but let's be honest, would a monk in the Middle Ages even know what a manta ray looked like? Probably not. Fun fact, the sea bishop isn't alone in the category of aquatic clergy. It has a cousin called the sea monk, a similar creature but with more monastic vibes. Apparently, medieval folklore loved its underwater ecclesiastical roles. 63. Aspidochalone, the island that eats you. The Aspidochalone is medieval mythology's way of saying, not everything that looks safe actually is. This giant sea creature was so enormous that sailors mistook it for an island. But here's the twist. As soon as they anchored and set up camp, the island would submerge, taking their ship and their dreams of survival with it. Some legends describe the Aspidochalone as a whale, while others say it's a turtle with a back covered in sand and vegetation to complete the disguise. Either way, it was a pretty effective trap for overly trusting sailors. The creature made its way into medieval bestiaries as a moral lesson, symbolizing deceit and temptation. It's like the mythological version of clicking on a shady email link. It seemed legit at first, but it was absolutely going to ruin your day. Fun fact? The Aspidochalone story might have been inspired by real-life encounters with whales or even volcanic islands. It's a good reminder, if your island starts moving, maybe don't stay for tea. 64. Kappa, Japan's mischievous water dweller. Now let's talk about the kappa, a creature from Japanese folklore that's equal parts weird and oddly charming. This water-dwelling humanoid has a turtle-like shell, webbed hands and feet, and a dish-like depression on its head that holds water. And here's the kicker. The water in that dish is the source of its power. Spill it, and the kappa becomes as harmless as a goldfish. Kappas are known for their mischievous and sometimes dangerous antics. They're said to hide in rivers and ponds, waiting to pull unsuspecting humans or livestock into the water. But they're not all bad. If you bow to a kappa, it will politely return the gesture, spilling the water from its head and effectively disarming itself. Politeness, the ultimate life hack. Fun fact, the kappa has a strange obsession with cucumbers. Offering one engraved with your name is said to appease the creature and ensure safe passage by the water. Honestly, it's a lot cheaper than hiring a bodyguard. The kappa's story has evolved over the centuries, and today it's more of a cultural mascot than a feared monster. It appears in everything from children's books to anime, proving that even a creature known for kidnapping people can have a rebranding moment. Whether it's a deceptive island, a soggy sea bishop, or a cucumber-loving water spirit, these mythical creatures remind us that folklore has a knack for turning even the most ordinary elements, like bishops and cucumbers, into something extraordinary. 65. Kanaloa, the dual nature of the ocean. In Hawaiian mythology, Kanaloa is a figure as vast and mysterious as the ocean he governs. Often seen as a god of both the sea and the underworld, Kanaloa embodies duality, creation and destruction, calm waters and raging storms. If you've ever wondered why the ocean can shift from serene to terrifying in an instant, Kanaloa might have something to do with it. Kanaloa is often paired with Cain, the god of creation and life. Together, they balance the forces of nature, Cain providing the spark of life, and Kanaloa offering the deep, enigmatic currents of the ocean and the unknown. Think of them as the ultimate yin and yang of Hawaiian mythology. Fun fact, some traditions link Kanaloa to navigation, crediting him with guiding ancient Polynesians across the vast Pacific. So not only could he summon storms, but he might have also been your spiritual GPS. Just don't blame him for rerouting you into a hurricane. 66. Iara, Brazil's dangerous siren. If you thought mermaids were all Disney songs and harmless hair combing, Iara is here to change your mind. This figure from Brazilian folklore is a mermaid-like creature with one key difference. She's less about singing catchy tunes and more about luring men to watery graves. Iara, whose name means Lady of the Waters, is often described as breathtakingly beautiful, with long dark hair and a hauntingly melodic voice. Men who hear her song are said to be hypnotized, willingly diving into the water to meet her, only to vanish forever. Talk about a bad date. Her origins are steeped in tragedy. One tale says Iara was once a mortal woman, unfairly accused by her jealous brothers and cast into a river. Transformed by the gods, she became a mermaid who now seeks revenge, or maybe just companionship, in her watery domain. Fun fact, Iara isn't all bad. In some stories, she's portrayed as a protector of the river and its creatures, punishing only those who disrespect her waters. So maybe recycle your trash next time you're by a riverbank, just to be safe. Scandinavia's musical lurker, the Naken, is the Scandinavian folklore equivalent of a siren, but with a violin. This water spirit, said to dwell in rivers and lakes, lures people to their doom with hauntingly beautiful music. If you hear the sound of a violin drifting across a quiet body of water, you might want to think twice before following it. The Naken can appear in many forms, from a handsome man to a monstrous figure, depending on the story. Regardless of its shape, its goal is the same: to enchant unsuspecting travelers and draw them into the water. And once you're in its grip, let's just say you won't be returning home to tell the tale. Fun fact, the Naken's enchanting music is so powerful that some legends say you can only break its spell by plugging your ears or, oddly enough, learning to play a better tune. Imagine challenging a magical water spirit to a violin duel. Good luck with that. Despite its darker aspects, the Naken isn't always malevolent. In some stories, it's simply a misunderstood spirit longing for connection. But whether it's a killer musician or a lonely soul, one thing's for sure: the Naken has turned Scandinavia's waterways into places where even a peaceful tune can spell trouble. From Kanaloa's commanding presence to Iara's haunting songs and the Naken's hypnotic melodies, these aquatic legends remind us of the power and danger of the world's waters. Just remember, If you hear beautiful music or see a captivating figure by the water, maybe stay on dry land. 68. Sirene Croyne, the Scottish shape-shifting sea monster. If you've ever heard the phrase, "don't judge a book by its cover," the Sirene Croyne might just be the reason it exists. This legendary sea monster from Scottish folklore has a sneaky talent. It can transform into smaller, harmless-looking creatures to lure its prey. Imagine approaching a cute little fish, only for it to morph into a massive sea beast that could swallow you whole. That's Sirene Croyne's game plan, and it's terrifyingly effective. This isn't just your average sea monster either. According to legend, Sirene Croyne could devour 7 full-grown whales before even considering itself full. 7 whales. That's not just a big appetite, that's a seafood buffet on steroids. The fishermen of Scotland must have spent their days praying they didn't accidentally hook this guy, especially since it was known to hang out in the depths of the ocean, just waiting to play its bait-and-switch trick. Fun fact? Some say the Sirene Croyne could disguise itself as a regular fish to sneak closer to unsuspecting prey. So the next time you think you've caught a nice salmon for dinner, maybe double-check. 69. Kalupalik, the Inuit, stay close to shore. Myth parenting advice, Inuit style, stay away from the water or the Kalupalik will get you. This sea creature from Inuit mythology is part mermaid, part cautionary tale, and all-around nightmare fuel for disobedient kids. The Kalupalik is described as a humanoid sea creature with greenish skin, long hair, and elongated fingernails. It wears an amati, a traditional Inuit parka, where it stashes the children it kidnaps. The creature is said to lure kids too close to the icy waters with a humming sound, dragging them beneath the surface to its underwater lair. Think of it as the original Stranger Danger, except it lives in the ocean and hums lullabies to reel you in. Fun fact, the Kalupalik isn't just about scaring children. It's also a symbol of the dangers of the Arctic environment. The myth reminds people to respect the power of the ocean and to be cautious around its unforgiving waters. While modern kids might get warnings about not talking to strangers or staying off TikTok too long, the Kalupalik legend adds an icy twist to the idea of behaving yourself. And honestly, the thought of being snatched up by a humming sea creature might have kept kids from wandering where they shouldn't. 70. Tiamat, the chaos dragon goddess of Babylon. If mythology had a heavyweight champion of chaos, Tiamat would be the undefeated title holder. This primordial sea goddess from Babylonian mythology isn't just a monster, she's the embodiment of chaos itself. Described as a massive dragon-like creature, Tiamat's story is as big and dramatic as the myths come. According to ancient Babylonian creation myths, Tiamat initially represented the nurturing, life-giving waters of creation. But when the younger gods decided to overthrow her and her consort Apsu, Tiamat unleashed her fury, transforming into a terrifying dragon. She created an army of monsters to fight on her behalf, including venomous serpents, scorpion men, and other creatures you definitely don't want to meet on your way to the grocery store. Her final showdown came against the god Marduk, the Babylonian hero who was chosen to defeat her. Armed with a net, a bow, and a lot of divine confidence, Marduk battled Tiamat, ultimately slaying her and using her body to create the heavens and the earth. Yes, you're technically walking around on the remains of a chaos dragon. Sleep well. Fun fact? Tiamat's name has become synonymous with chaos in pop culture, appearing in everything from fantasy novels to video games. Whether she's a goddess or a dragon, one thing's for sure. Tiamat doesn't do anything halfway. From the sneaky Sirene Croyne to the child-snatching Kalupalik and the chaos-commanding Tiamat, these legends remind us that humanity has always turned to the ocean to find its most fascinating and fearsome stories. Just be glad these creatures are confined to mythology. Or are they? 71. Azazel, the desert dweller of sin. Let's talk about Azazel, the OG bad influence. According to Abrahamic mythology, Azazel was a fallen angel who didn't just hang out in the heavenly choir. Nope, he's more like the one who snuck into the desert to start a whole different kind of choir, one dedicated to sin, temptation, and apparently making humans' lives a little more complicated. Azazel is tied to the ancient ritual of the scapegoat, where a goat would be symbolically loaded with the sins of the people and sent off into the wilderness. And where did this sin-laden goat go? To Azazel, of course. That's right. He's not just the figure behind the phrase, "Don't blame me," but he might also be the reason goats have such an untrustworthy stare. Fun fact, Azazel's role as a scapegoat receiver made him infamous, but he wasn't just sitting in the desert chilling. He was accused of teaching humanity all sorts of questionable things, like how to make weapons and fancy eyeliner. So, if you're ever feeling conflicted about smoky eyes being both fabulous and sinful, you know who to thank. 72. Asmodeus, the demon of lust and furniture. Meet Asmodeus, the demon with more side gigs than a struggling actor. In demonology, he's best known as the king of lust and greed. But that's not all. This guy has his name dropped in the Book of Tobit, where he causes some serious trouble, including offing a bride's husbands one after another. Talk about a bad wedding streak. But here's where Asmodeus gets extra weird. Some legends say he also has a thing for architecture and furniture. Yes, this terrifying demon supposedly helped build King Solomon's temple, showing that even infernal spirits appreciate a good design project. Just don't ask him to put together your IKEA furniture. You might end up cursed and stuck with leftover screws. Fun fact, Asmodeus is often depicted as having 3 heads, a human, a bull, and a ram. It's like he couldn't decide what to wear to the demon ball, so he just went with everything. 73. Dybbuk, the possessive personality. Now let's dive into Jewish folklore and meet the Dybbuk, a restless spirit that can't take rest in peace seriously. The Dybbuk is believed to be the wandering soul of a sinner, one who's so bad at letting go that it decides to hijack a living person's body. Think of it as ghostly squatting, but instead of taking over an abandoned house, it takes over you. Dybbuks are notorious for causing chaos, from speaking through their hosts in eerie voices to unleashing bizarre behavior. But they're not all malice. Some stories suggest they possess people to right a wrong or complete unfinished business. Of course, if that business involves screaming in Yiddish and knocking over furniture, it's a little hard to sympathize. Fun fact, the Dybbuk was popularized in the early 20th century through plays and literature, and it's even inspired modern horror movies. So the next time you hear strange whispers while walking past an antique shop, maybe think twice about that too-good-to-be-true deal on a vintage mirror. 74. Jinn, the original wishmakers and mischief makers. When it comes to supernatural multitaskers, the jinn, or jinn, take the prize. These beings from Islamic folklore aren't just your standard spooks. They're complex creatures capable of both good deeds and downright devilish antics. Think of them as the original freelancers of the supernatural world, taking on whatever role suits their mood or the story. In Islamic tradition, jinn are made from smokeless fire, which sounds fancy, but also slightly ominous. They live in a parallel world to humans, complete with their own societies, families, and presumably some very fiery debates. And no, they're not all about granting wishes like the Disney-fied genies we know. They can be helpful, harmful, or just plain mischievous depending on their mood. Fun fact, the Western concept of the wish-granting genie is loosely inspired by jinn legends, but let's just say the original tales didn't involve catchy songs or lamps. In fact, most people in the folklore would rather avoid them altogether. So, if you stumble across an old lamp, maybe think twice before giving it a rub. 75. Amen, the demon of all the gossip. If you've ever wanted a walking Wikipedia for everything that's ever happened and might happen, Amen is your guy. Well, demon. This infernal figure from demonology is said to know all things past and future, which makes him the ultimate know-it-all at any hellish cocktail party. Amen is often depicted with a wolf's head and a serpent's tail, which is a bold fashion choice even for the underworld. He's one of the 72 spirits of Solomon, part of a group of demons bound by King Solomon's legendary ring. But don't let his monstrous appearance fool you. This demon's real weapon is knowledge. Whether you need ancient secrets or stock market predictions, Amen probably has you covered. Fun fact, Amen's dual animal design might symbolize his cunning and unpredictability, but honestly it just makes him look like he wandered out of a particularly weird zoo exhibit. 76. Lilith, the original femme fatale. Lilith is a figure steeped in mystery, power, and more than a little controversy. In Jewish folklore, she's often portrayed as a night demon who preys on infants and pregnant women, but her origin story is what really gets people talking. According to some traditions, Lilith was Adam's first wife, created as his equal before Eve came along. Let's just say that didn't go well. Lilith refused to be subservient to Adam. You go, girl. And after a disagreement that escalated quickly, she fled the Garden of Eden. From there, she became a figure of both fear and fascination, a symbol of rebellion, independence, and admittedly, a bit of a penchant for haunting people at night. Fun fact, Lilith's legend has evolved over time, and in modern interpretations, she's often seen as a feminist icon. Sure, she's got the whole stealing babies thing going on, but she also stands for refusing to settle for less than equality. From the fiery unpredictability of Jinn to Amon's all-seeing powers and Lilith's legendary defiance, these figures remind us that mythology isn't just about monsters. It's about the stories we tell to explain power, rebellion, and the ever-complicated human condition. 77. Barghest, the Hound. You don't want to hear at night. If you're wandering the dark lanes of northern England and hear the low, ominous growl of a barghest, you might want to reconsider your life choices. This monstrous black dog isn't just a spooky pupper. It's an omen of death. With glowing red eyes and a howl that's said to make even the bravest knights drop their swords, the barghest has been haunting English folklore for centuries. Local legends describe the barghest as a shapeshifter, sometimes appearing as a headless man or even a terrifying cat. But the black dog form is its go-to look, making it the goth icon of the mythical canine world. It's often spotted lurking near graveyards or crossroads, just to hammer home its whole harbinger of doom vibe. Fun fact, some people claim that hearing the barghest's howl means you've been marked for death. Others suggest it's just a really aggressive neighborhood watchdog. Either way, best to avoid making eye contact or any noise that might attract its attention. 78. Pazuzu, the demon with a Hollywood resume. Pazuzu may not be a household name, but if you've seen The Exorcist, you've definitely met his work. This Mesopotamian demon of wind and plagues isn't exactly the life of the party, unless that party involves widespread illness and a lot of screaming. In ancient Mesopotamia, Pazuzu was considered a powerful, albeit terrifying figure. Here's the twist. Pazuzu wasn't all bad. He was often invoked to protect against other demons, like Lamashtu, who were said to prey on pregnant women and infants. Think of him as a terrifying bouncer for the supernatural realm, scary enough to keep even worse things away. Fun fact, Pazuzu's unsettling appearance, sharp claws, a lion's head, and a snake-like tail made him a perfect fit for Hollywood horror. So if you've ever had nightmares about creepy statues or spinning heads, you might owe Pazuzu a thank you note. 79. Erlik, the original lord of the underworld. In Turkic mythology, Erlik is the god of the underworld, and, unsurprisingly, not someone you'd want to invite to dinner. He's associated with death, darkness, and all the gloomy stuff that comes with ruling the afterlife. But Erlik isn't just a Grim Reaper type, he's got layers. According to legend, Erlik was once a creator figure who fell out of favor with higher powers. After being cast into the underworld, he became its ruler, overseeing the souls of the dead and occasionally meddling in the affairs of the living. Think of him as the original bad boss, literally. Fun fact, Erlik is sometimes depicted with a fierce bearded face and a crown, which feels like a missed opportunity for a shampoo commercial. Despite his fearsome reputation, he's a fascinating figure, representing the balance between creation and destruction in Turkic mythology. 80. Alp, the original sleep paralysis demon. If you've ever woken up in the middle of the night, unable to move and convinced something is sitting on your chest, congratulations. You've met the Alp. This mischievous nightmare spirit from German folklore doesn't just haunt your dreams, it crashes into your REM cycle like an uninvited guest. The Alp is often described as a tiny, impish creature, but don't let its small stature fool you. It's got big chaos energy. Believed to slip through keyholes or creep in through cracks, the Alp perches on your chest as you sleep, causing that dreadful sensation of being unable to breathe. Sleep paralysis, anyone? Fun fact, Alps have a bizarre weakness. If you leave your shoes by your bed, they'll feel compelled to untangle the laces before doing anything else. So the next time you suspect an Alp is lurking, make your footwear a little messier. Who knew being untidy could save you from supernatural mischief? 81. Shaitan, the ultimate bad influence. In Islamic folklore, The shaitan is the spiritual equivalent of that friend who always convinces you to make bad choices. These malevolent spirits are said to tempt humans into straying from righteousness, often with a whispered word here or a well-timed distraction there. Shaitans are frequently compared to the concept of Satan in Western traditions, but they have their own unique traits. Unlike the all-powerful devil figure, shaitans are more like rogue troublemakers, working to nudge humanity off the right path. Think of them as the original bad PR agents for morality. Fun fact, it's believed that during Ramadan, shaitans are chained up to give humans a better chance at resisting temptation. So if you're feeling extra virtuous during that time, now you know why. Shaitan-free zone for a month. It's a spiritual cheat code. 82. Pontianak. The frangipani-scented phantom Malay folklore brings us the Pontianak, a ghostly figure with a tragic backstory and a terrifying mission. Said to be the vengeful spirit of a woman who died during childbirth, the Pontianak isn't just another spooky specter. It's a symbol of grief, injustice, and supernatural fury. The Pontianak is often associated with the scent of frangipani flowers, a fragrant warning that you're about to encounter something terrifying. Appearing as a beautiful woman with flowing hair, she lures unsuspecting men before revealing her true form, a ghastly, blood-soaked visage. Fun fact, folklore says you can ward off a Pontianak by driving a nail into the back of her neck. Apparently, this forces her to transform into a normal woman. Sounds extreme, but hey, desperate times, right? Despite her fearsome reputation, the Pontianak is a deeply cultural figure, representing themes of loss and vengeance. Just remember, if you ever catch a whiff of frangipani at night, it might be time to call it a day and head indoors. Better safe than sorry. 83. Obaifo, the glow-in-the-dark menace. If the idea of vampires wasn't spooky enough, the Ashanti folklore of Ghana gave us the Obaifo, a witch-like creature with a taste for the life force of both crops and children. Yes, you read that right. This isn't your standard bloodsucker. This one comes for your farm and your family. The Obaifo is said to glow faintly in the dark when on the hunt, a feature that makes it one part terrifying and one part oddly festive. Imagine your cornfield being raided by what looks like a sentient glow stick, except it's draining the life out of your harvest. Farmers in Ashanti folklore believed the Obaifo was responsible for crop failures, sickness, and even unexplained tragedies. Fun fact, to ward off this luminous life drainer, people would place protective charms or perform rituals to keep their crops and children safe. So next time your tomato plant looks a little droopy, you might want to double-check for glowing figures hiding nearby. 84. Succubus, the dream seductress. The succubus is the kind of demon that makes you rethink your late-night dreams. This figure from demonology is often depicted as a beautiful woman who seduces men while they sleep, draining their energy, or worse, their life force. Think of her as a nightmarish version of a femme fatale, but with supernatural flair. In medieval lore, succubi were often blamed for unexplained fatigue or illnesses in men. Did you wake up feeling particularly drained after a vivid dream? Congratulations, a succubus probably paid you a visit, at least according to the folklore of the time. Fun fact, despite their terrifying reputation, succubi have often been reimagined in pop culture as misunderstood or even empowering figures. But let's not forget their original purpose, to be literal dream killers. So maybe skip the flirty ghost jokes if you ever think you've spotted one. 85. Incubus, the nightmare gentleman. Now, let's talk about the succubus's male counterpart, the incubus. This demon operates on the same playbook, sneaking into dreams, preying on the vulnerable, and leaving chaos in its wake. The only difference? It's targeting women. Medieval folklore often described the incubus as a shadowy male figure that caused nightmares, exhaustion, and even mysterious illnesses in its victims. Much like the succubus, the incubus was used to explain all sorts of nighttime phenomena that couldn't be chalked up to science back then. Weird dreams? Probably an incubus. Feeling tired for no reason? Definitely an incubus. Honestly, these creatures must have been exhausted themselves, working overtime to mess with everyone's REM sleep. Fun fact, legends say incubi and succubi could shapeshift to suit their target's desires, making them master manipulators. But don't be too impressed, they still had to sneak around in the dead of night like supernatural con artists. 86. Gashadokuro, the nighttime skeleton stalker. If you've ever wondered what happens when too many unburied skeletons decide to hang out together, the Gashadokuro is your answer. This Japanese folklore giant is exactly what it sounds like, a massive, clattering skeleton that roams the night looking for humans to snack on. The catch? You won't see it coming, unless you hear its fate-rattling sound, and by then, it's too late. The Gashadokuro is said to be born from the bones of soldiers or famine victims who died without proper burials. Their restless spirits combine to create one terrifying, bone-crunching monstrosity. Think of it as a tragic, skeletal remix of collective resentment. It's not just here for a scare, it's angry, and it's hungry. Fun fact, the best defense against a Gashadokuro? Staying indoors after dark. Simple, effective, and a great excuse to binge-watch your favorite show. No one wants to be the midnight snack of a disgruntled skeleton. 87. Yokai, the Swiss Army knife of Japanese supernaturals. The term yokai in Japanese mythology is like saying supernatural beings, but on steroids. Yokai are a catch-all for creatures, spirits, and bizarre happenings. They can be tricksters, protectors, or downright terrifying. In essence, if something weird happened in old Japan, like your sandals disappearing, it was probably a yokai. Some yokai, like the mischievous kitsune, fox spirit, are known for playing tricks on humans, often disguising themselves as beautiful women. Others, like the deadly oni, are giant ogres that wield clubs and aren't here for games. There's even a yokai called the tsukumogami, which is an ordinary household object, like an umbrella, that comes to life after 100 years. Yes, even your possessions might turn on you. Fun fact, yokai lore is so diverse that it even includes creatures that love pranks, like pulling your hair or stealing food. So next time something mysterious happens, don't blame your sibling. Maybe it's just a playful yokai. 88. Tikbalang, the forest's mischief maker. Picture this. You're lost in the forest, the moonlight barely lighting your way, and out of the shadows steps a tikbalang. Half human, half horse, this creature from Philippine folklore is known for leading travelers astray. Its lanky, horse-headed frame is both ridiculous and terrifying, and it's got a mischievous streak that could rival the yokai. Tikbalangs are said to enjoy confusing humans, making you walk in circles no matter how hard you try to escape. But here's the twist. They're not always evil. In fact, some legends say you can tame a tikbalang by plucking 3 golden hairs from its mane. Easier said than done, though, since getting close to one is about as appealing as trying to pet a wild horse with fangs. Fun fact, tikbalangs are also known to take human form and trick unsuspecting people. So if someone in the village seems oddly horse-like or particularly good at leading you into trouble, maybe keep your distance. 89. Ankou, the grim chauffeur. In Breton folklore, Ankou is the VIP chauffeur you never want to meet. Picture this. Wait, no, don't picture it. A skeletal figure dressed in tattered robes, cruising around in a creaky wooden cart collecting souls like it's the latest Amazon delivery route. This isn't your friendly neighborhood death figure, though. Ankou is all business, no small talk, and plenty of ominous creaks from his cart's wheels as he glides through the night. What makes Ankou especially spooky isn't just his skeletal vibe, but the air of inevitability he carries. He's not there to haggle over life choices or cut deals. If he shows up, it's time to pack up, permanently. Legend has it that Ankou's cart is sometimes pulled by ghostly horses or driven by an assistant who looks just as lively as he does. And if you're unlucky enough to hear the wheels creak or the horses snort outside your door, well, you might want to start saying your goodbyes. Fun fact, in some tales, Ankou is believed to be the soul of the last person who died in a year. So, technically, he's on a 1-year temp contract with death itself. Talk about a bleak retirement gig. 90. Huli Jing, the fox with 1,000 tricks. Foxes are already pretty clever, but in Chinese folklore, the Huli Jing takes it to a whole new level. This fox spirit is a shape-shifting mastermind capable of transforming into anything from a beautiful maiden to a wealthy scholar. Whether it's here to charm, deceive, or just have some fun, the Huli Jing is the ultimate wild card. What's fascinating about the Huli Jing is its dual nature. It can either be a benevolent spirit, offering wisdom and guidance, or a malevolent trickster, luring people into disaster. It all depends on how you treat it, or, how it's feeling that day. The fox's powers grow with age, and by the time it hits 1,000 years old, it can achieve celestial fox status, complete with 9 tails. That's right, this spirit is basically the original multitasker. Fun fact, despite its mischievous tendencies, the Huli Jing isn't just about causing chaos. In some stories, they fall in love with humans, forming deep bonds and even helping their partners achieve success. Of course, you might also find them stealing your chickens or enchanting your neighbor, so it's always a gamble. And that's a wrap. We've journeyed through tales of skeletal drivers, crafty fox spirits, and creatures so bizarre you'd think someone made them up after a long night with no sleep. These legends aren't just about the creepy or the cool. They're a window into the hopes, fears, and creativity of the people who told them. Plus, let's be honest, who doesn't love a good story with a monster or two? Which creature had you saying, "Nope, not today"? Did we miss one of your favorites? Or do you have a local legend that deserves the spotlight? Drop it in the comments. We want to hear your stories. And if you had fun hanging out with us in this mythical monster mash, give that like button a little love. Share this video with your friends, especially the ones who think they know all the spooky stuff. And hey, don't forget to subscribe. There's plenty more legendary lore coming your way. Check out our other videos for even more wild stories and fascinating facts. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep an eye out for anything with glowing eyes, or maybe just stick to daylight walks.